This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
3 minutes after 10 is the time. It was a slightly pregnant pause there, wasn't it? It was just long enough for me and Keith, I think, to panic, or for Keith and I to panic. No, Keith never panics, but there's that little bit of a pause between the end of the last advert and the beginning of that rather jolly sting. I thought there was did you not think there was a pregnant pause? Well, I don't know. It's like an unexpected pause. It's a pregnant pause. Have you not heard the phrase before? We should probably have I've said it before. I'll say it again. We should probably have these chats off air, shouldn't we? Although, I don't know. Maybe it creates a nice warm family atmosphere so that everybody feels that I think we're all just sort of chewing the fat, shooting the breeze, spinning a yarn. Anyway, I'm here. Happy days. 4 minutes after 10. Speaking of happy days, if you ever have the pleasure of spending some time in the company of comedians, if one of them says something that isn't very funny, the other ones have a little catchphrase. Do you know what it is? It's quite a nice catchphrase, actually. They say, I wouldn't open with it. So the idea being that when you come onto the stage as a comedian, you open with some of your best material. You've got to grab the audience by the scruff of the neck. Ideally, you want to open and close with your best gags, with your best jokes, your best lines, because you grab them and then you leave them wanting more. I suffer from a similar condition. Sometimes a story drops in front of me, on this occasion at 9:52 a.m. You may have already seen it. So 13 minutes ago or so. And I think to myself, well, I need to tell you about this. You'd be cross with me if I didn't. And also, you know, this might be the only programme you rely on to get your daily fix of information and news. But I don't want to tell you. I don't want to bring this story into your life. But it falls to me to do so, with a caveat that it doesn't include us. But the EU has just told 450 million people to stockpile 72 hours worth of supplies amid the risk of war. More on that later. It's not exactly the kind of headline you want to... Well, I wouldn't open with it, but I just did. It's not exactly the kind of headline you want to start your day with, but there it is. And I'll tell you what else it does. It highlights the question I've asked you a few times lately of why on earth the usual suspects were so keen to scare us about the prospect of a European army in the run-up to the Brexit vote. It just gets more and more mysterious, doesn't it? Unless, of course, their motivation all along was to do whatever it was that best suited the interests and ambitions of a certain Vladimir Putin. Thank goodness there are no British politicians who were scaremongering about the European army and who have made no secret of their deep admiration for Vladimir Putin. And speaking of the B words, if you were to dig into the OBR forecasts on which yesterday's spring statement were made, you would have stumbled across this. Weak growth in imports and exports over the medium term partly reflect the continuing impact of Brexit, which we expect to reduce the overall trade intensity of the UK economy by 15% in the long term. We're not doing that today. Not that angle, but how much coverage have you listened to or read so far this morning of the spring statement? And how much of it included the fact that all of the forecasts, or rather the central forecast upon which everything is built, and which is by definition fallible and possibly even unreliable, but they're the only forecasts that the Treasury can work with. How much of the coverage that you've encountered this morning reminded you that forecast includes a 15% long-term collapse in overall trade intensity of the UK economy? 15%, 15%, not 1.5, not 0.1, 15%. I think I've got another little bit of information for you that may qualify as a missed information, and I might get it up and running early before I tell you the angle that we want to take in the first hour of this morning's programme. In the second hour, I think as scheduled and as promised, we're probably going to turn our attention to some of the ramifications of that extraordinary television drama, Adolescence. But I think, certainly the Brexit angle counts as a minor missed information, doesn't it? But I think this is probably a rather bigger one.
Missed information.
Thank you, Emily. So you know, because you've seen it on your front pages or you've had it rammed down your throat this morning, that the OBR has forecasts the economy to grow this year by just 1%. That is a reduction of 100%. It's gone, well, depending on whether you start at 1% or 2%, it's either gone down by 50% or 100%. And that is your right-wing newspaper front page, inevitably. Growth halved. what you may not be aware of, and again, I want to stress that, here it is, Daily Mail. Our growth forecast for this year has been slashed in half. What I want to stress is that the economic establishment doesn't actually have a great deal of faith in OBR forecasts, not least because of the unknown unknowns and the known unknowns and the unknown knowns that are on the horizon, including things like tariffs, trade wars, and the ongoing situation in Ukraine. But the OBR is the only body upon which the Treasury can rely when putting together its economic plans, all right, budgeting, as it were. So you will know that the forecast for this year has been slashed in half from 2% to 1%. You may not know that the same forecasts have growth accelerating to 1.9% in 2026. In fact, every year from 2026 onwards has seen a forecast of increased growth. So the numbers have actually gone up since October from only a modest they've gone up to 9.4% from 9.2%. The cumulative growth over the whole of that period, which is the end of last year to the beginning of 2030, has actually seen an increase in the OBR's growth forecasts. Again, you won't know that if you are getting your news from people that you probably shouldn't be trusting. But you will always get it from me. So that's the focus of right-wing media this morning. That's the focus of the people who dominate the print media agenda and much of the broadcast media agenda, the BBC, Sky and Channel 4. ITN notwithstanding. The left, or what's left of it, is very cross this morning about who is going to be paying for the savings that Rachel Reeves seeks to make. The Daily Mirror tells you, balancing the books on the backs of the poor. And 50,000 children is the rough estimate, again, under the government's own calculations of the number of children that will be pushed into official poverty. 250,000 people in total to be pushed into official poverty by welfare cuts. 3 million families losing an average of £1,720 a year. I'd remind you, there are currently approximately 800 and something thousand job vacancies in this country. So I think we can probably nix from the get-go the idea that these cuts are going to be replaced by income. 3 million families, not people, 3 million families losing an average of £1,720 a year. And I'd also remind you that a significant proportion of people on both PIP and on universal credit are, of course, in work. So 50,000 children will be added to the amount living in households bringing in 60% or less of median income. We're seeing a £6 billion reduction in what is paid for incapacity and disability benefits. And one think tank, I think the Rowntree Foundation, has already suggested that the real figure is closer to 400,000 as opposed to 250,000. The Chancellor insists this is necessary to balance the books, saying we're confident that the changes that we are making and the support that we're providing to get people into work will result in more people having fulfilling careers, paying decent wages, and of course that's the best way to lift families out of poverty. So how do we make sense of the idea that 3 million families being introduced to poverty, official poverty, in a country where there are approximately 800 and something thousand job vacancies is a rationale for cuts to people who are the most vulnerable in society? I don't think today's the day to do the politics of it, but if it were, and we may get onto it tomorrow, I think this is a really significant moment in some ways, because it speaks to a shift in who the Labour Party think they are for. I don't know whether it's a middle-class condition, that if you support the Labour Party, you think that you are voting in general elections to help people less fortunate than yourself. Immediately, the patronising alarm goes off. Immediately, the condescending alarm goes off. doesn't it? Oh, well, and the virtue signalling alarm goes off as well. Oh, get you, you're wonderful, voting to help people less fortunate than yourself. I've spent 14 years telling you on every budget and spring statement day that I come out of it better off than I went into it, and they should not be introducing policies that make me better off on a Thursday than I was on a Wednesday. But that's moot now, because what they seem to be doing is recalibrating their appeal to people who think they should be getting help themselves, or people that think other people shouldn't be getting help. And that, to me, feels quite right-wing. The idea that you can look at the fiscal condition of this country and conclude that the place from which you are going to take money is the place inhabited by people who are already poor and often disabled. In fact, if we look at that £6 billion, it's people who are disabled and or incapacitated. A sadistically cruel assault upon the disabled, according to some Labour MPs who vowed to vote against the cuts. Of course, they won't derail the overall project because the party's majority in the Commons is so great, and because the severity of consequence for Labour MPs who defy the whip was established very early on by Keir Starmer. So this is a very sad day, I think. And it's not a day to discuss the politics of it or the pragmatism of it. Because the thing about pragmatism is that it is morally neutral. Pragmatism, like utilitarianism, is about calculations designed to identify, if you like, the greater good and to write off the consequences, the casualties, the people paying the price. And today, I want to talk about you, if you are one of the people that thinks you're going to be paying the price. I'm going to tell you something now that I think gives you an indication of how insulated I am from some of the colder realities of the cost of living crisis. And that thing is this: I have no idea, really, how any of this is going to affect me, if at all. I'm certainly not going to be affected by cuts to incapacity and disability benefits, and I am in a relatively small, but not negligible, constituency of voters who thinks that they should probably be paying a little bit more tax. Quite where and how is a conversation for another day. But if it is truly the case that this government has to find £6 billion from somewhere, it seems reasonable to me to suggest that it should be coming from the highest earners in the country and the holders of the most assets in the country. If I said it's got to be the most assets, it'd be a little bit self-serving, because I'm quite a high earner, but I don't have an awful lot of assets. So it looks a little bit self-serving for me to say, let's have a wealth tax. Wealth tax is very popular with people who haven't got any wealth. But I still think that that has to be on the agenda at some point moving forward. I suspect we'll see increases in taxes on earnings, but what we should really be looking at is an increase in taxes on assets. It's difficult. Look at the fuss that the right-wing media made when they just brought farmers up to a 50% level of where everybody in possession of, or everyone inheriting a similarly sized estate in any other sector would be required to pay. So I want to tell you this from the start, that this is not going to affect me. And even if it is, I don't really know how. And there's another problem here. When sometimes you hear people, usually people that are absolutely outraged by the idea of anyone being required to pay VAT on their private school fees, when you hear people denying the actual existence of poverty, I've given this a lot of thought over the years, because I hear and read people who I might know socially, or I might even quite like in some contexts, denying the existence of poverty, expressing absolute disbelief or skepticism about the idea of people not being able to afford shampoo or soap or having to use food banks. The callous, cynical indifference translates very quickly into cruelty and claims that the only reason people are using a food bank is because they've run out of money that they've spent on flat screen televisions and Benson and Hedges. You know the rhetoric. You've had it shoved down your throat since you were in the cradle in this country, or at least since Rupert Murdoch bought The Sun. So I'm always interested in poverty denial. And part of the problem with poverty denial is an inability to understand the amount of money that matters to somebody who's got almost none. I use a really weird analogy, and I'm going to use it again. I don't use it often because it's not very pleasant. And you need to exclude from this misers, people who are just obsessed with accruing cash regardless of how much they've got. You can have poor misers and you can have rich misers, but this is about I always use a gents' toilet, and it's a pub on match day, right? Which means, for those of you not familiar with pubs on match days in this sceptred isle, and indeed for all women whose facilities I think are rather more salubrious than the gents, the floor on match day in a gents' toilet will be quite wet, and the wetness could be quite deep. And so what I often wonder is, how much money could you drop onto that urine-addled floor that you would not be able to leave there? Is it a £1 coin? You'd bend down and pick it up, rinse it off, put it in your pocket. Is it a 50p coin? Is it a £10 note? Is it a £20 note? Is it a £50 note? What's the sum of money that you would fish out of a rancid toilet bowl because you couldn't afford to lose it? It's not the best analogy I've ever come up with, but it immediately distinguishes, it slices the population, because some people will barely be able to conceive of the amount of money they'd go rooting around in a rancid toilet bowl for. So certain are they that they would never need to. Some people would have to go after 50p. Some people, I presume, would have to go after 10p. Whew. So how's it going to hit you? How do we illustrate something that I never thought a Labour government would need to have illustrated, that the people that they are taking £6 billion from can't afford to lose it? You're more than welcome to ring me and tell me that they can. But it's a big ask. It's a big challenge. How is it going to hit you? We may talk about the politics of it tomorrow, because contrary to what some people might think, I'm not sure it is going to be political hara-kiri. But I don't care about the politics of it today. I care about the principle. And there is something almost unbelievably rank about looking at the economic state of this country, charging yourself with the task of finding £6 billion and going after disabled and poorly people. So how's it going to hit you? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. How will this hit you? You may not know for sure yet, but your fear matters to me and to many people listening to this program. The fear that Rachel Reeves has introduced into your life today, please God, it turns out to be unjustified, but it takes a toll on you. It's a trauma that you will carry and will sit with you. That fear, the chemical release, the fight or flight, the adrenalized terror that you contemplate at the thought of not being able to make ends meet next month or next year because you're barely doing it now. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Okay, how's this going to hit you? Can you afford it? Who can? Is there anyone in the country on disability benefit, on PIP, or on incapacity benefit who looks at their numbers and thinks, yeah, I can afford this? 0345 6060 973, which is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC.
And the other distinction, I think, is not helpful between working and not working, because many of the people in receipt of these benefits will be working. But you may not know because it doesn't really get reported, but raising the minimum wage for 3 million of the lowest paid workers is the kind of thing that those of us who somewhat patronisingly see a vote for Labour as a vote to help people less fortunate than ourselves, no one really wants to be described like that, but they're the only words I've got. That's the kind of policy that you're looking for. Even the retention of the triple lock for 13 million state pensioners you could describe thusly, despite the fact that some of those 13 million are going to be considerably richer than Yao. But how does taking £6 billion from claimants of incapacity and disability benefits land in your world? Deborah's in Birmingham. Deborah, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
I am very scared. Sorry.
Hey, take your time. All the space you need, all right? And no pressure at all.
I'm on a limited capacity to work on universal credit and also on PIP. Due to a birth injury I suffered whilst having my daughter.
Okay.
And I was a mental health nurse in a previous life.
A mental health nurse?
I was, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm scared because I don't meet the new criteria.
What is you mean the point system?
Yeah. I got 2s and 3s on most of them, and now I think I've changed it. You have to have 4 on at least one. My condition has worsened since my last review, but you don't know how your next review is going to go.
Right.
And yeah, I'm scared because I'm relying on it for everything in my house. All the bills I pay are through that.
The personal independence payment.
Yep. So it's the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen. It's the anxiety of not being looked at with the same sympathy that maybe we once were. And no one chooses. I don't believe anybody chooses to be in this position. I genuinely don't. I don't think this kind of rhetoric of we're all out for everything that we can get is helpful at all. And specifically for people like myself who this hasn't always been my life, this hasn't always been my reality, and people's situations change and alter, and I can't understand how it's fair to view us all through this lens of we're here to get what we want, we're here to get as much as we can, and
that's how you feel you are being viewed. I don't know if you heard Darren Jones, and I think Rachel Reeves joined in, although I think they've apologised now for saying that you're like a child who's having their pocket money cut. But the good news is you could get a paper round. It's all very well to sit in their offices with their newly increased salary and thing, and look at the rest of us, and all they're doing is kind of sucking up to the kind of centre middle ground that they're now doing, and feeding into this nonsense rhetoric that we're all trying to scam people and we're all out to get as much as we can. And it's just what happens to the country where we look after those that are weaker than ourselves, and we look after those that need the extra help. I did that for 20 years, and now I'm in a position where I need it, and now I feel as if I'm not entitled to it, and I feel guilty for taking it. But what else can I do? I don't know. And I mean, I know it's no comfort at all to you to say wait and see, and that it may not be that you are, because the green paper is going to be put up to consultation, and hopefully this, particularly because I've heard this a few times now, this requirement to score 4 or on at least one category won't survive, because it seems to me to be a guillotine rather than a sensible policy. It does. And I don't think it's really the moment or the morning to ask you about the unsustainability, the alleged unsustainability of the growing bill. But I might ask you this: where should she have gone instead? I'm of the mind that it could have been a tax on assets, like you were saying earlier, or a tax on wealth. I think there's far more available to her than she would have people think, and I think she's just feeding into this kind of thing at the moment that we're to blame. There is so much else in this country where money can be saved. There's so many more ways that we can look at cutting out waste and insufficient spending. NHS, for one example, there's so much insufficient spending in the NHS. There's so much wasteful spending, and there are people, when they came into power, Keir Starmer said that the biggest burden should lie with those with the broadest shoulders. Are we the ones with the broadest shoulders? Well, probably not. I mean, again, you understand, I'm just getting the detail out there. But so 3.8 million families under this calculation will gain from the changes. That they will see their benefits lifted by an average of £420 in real terms. So you could fall into that category, but until you know,
That's the thing. There's so much being left in limbo, and they don't realise the amount of anxiety this causes already. People that are very, very anxious anyway. A lot of people suffer with anxiety due to their pain or their situation. You look at how like myself, their whole life has changed through no fault of their own, and there's nothing but add to their anxiety and their fears and their sense of not being a valuable member of society, not being
20 years as a mental health nurse, and that's how you've been reduced. 100%. I'm so sorry for that.
Thank you, Dave.
Final question.
Yeah.
How do you greet the news that there's going to be £1 billion a year made available to help people like you back into work?
I question the availability of the work that would be suitable for disabled people. I question the suitable jobs being close enough, available enough, whether employers are willing to take on people who have issues that need care and consideration for. Ultimately, it's not the government that are employing us, it's employers. So if the employers are not happy to take on people with the extra needs that they may have, what are we going to do then? You can't force the employers to say, yes, okay, we'll employ them.
So again, limbo. We need to find out what the £1 billion is going to be spent on. I hope I speak to you again in 6 months and it turns out that things were not as bad as you fear, but I don't want you to think for a moment that people listening to this don't appreciate that the fear is the point on a morning like today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. Well, thank you. And you've articulated the position that you and many other people find themselves in this morning quite perfectly. Thank you. And thank you also for your 20 years of work in one of the most thankless, difficult and important areas of healthcare in this country. 10:31 is the time. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:35 is the time. It's first day in a while, isn't it, that we haven't been talking about events in the United States. And goodness me, have we called those right in the last few days. About 10 minutes after coming off air yesterday, Jeffrey Goldberg, the journalist from The Atlantic, who was accidentally invited into that exceedingly classified conversation, did exactly what we said he should do. I'm not suggesting for a minute, even with my ego, that us saying it on the show had anything to do with his decision. But that's what I like about the time we spend together sometimes, is that if you really work everything out, so one caller said yesterday, trying to make sense of the nonsense, occasionally it works. And it did appear as if once Pete Hegseth had lied about what had happened in that conversation, then it almost gave permission to the journalist to reveal the details that he'd decided to keep secret, and he did so, thus rendering the Secretary of State for Defense in Donald Trump's second administration. Well, two things happened. Number one, he was outed as a complete and irredeemable liar, and number two, a very reasonable question was asked about whether or not he had been drunk when he engaged in that sort of behaviour. I suppose you could add another question, which would be, was he drunk when he denied it? Or was he so drunk when he did it that when he denied it, he'd already forgotten because of some form of alcoholic blackout? And his record, I'm afraid, admits these questions. But of course, it is relevant to the conversation that we're having, because if the trade war escalates, Donald Trump announcing today tariffs on all cars being imported into the United States of America, so the price of cars in the United States immediately rockets, and there is a likely tariff of 20% on everything that comes in from the EU, and the words trade war now become relevant, and they could make an absolute dog's dinner. They could make mincemeat of Rachel Reeves' spring statement yesterday and of the OBR's budget forecast. They could blow everything up. Financial Times reporting already this morning, Trump's car tariffs pile pressure on Rachel Reeves' economic plan. You can be certain of two things. Donald Trump will do terrible things that hurt his own people and his own voters almost as much, if not more, than they hurt anybody else. And the second thing is that if they do impact negatively upon British finances, 80% of the British media will pretend that it's Rachel Reeves' fault, not Donald Trump's, in much the same way that Gordon Brown was blamed as recently as the last general election for a global financial crisis which he is widely regarded to have led much of the world out of. But hey-ho, back to yesterday's spring statement. Just mentioning Gordon Brown, because I'm reminding myself of what I always thought the Labour movement stood for. And it never really stood for looking at the economic state of the country, concluding that they need to raise £6 billion and deciding that they're going to get it from people on disability and incapacity benefits. How's it going to hit you? Holly's in Cambridge. Holly, what would you like to say?
Hi there. I'm just so angry.
That's, understandable.
The lack of compassion Rachel Reeves has for people is just beyond words for me. It's obvious she doesn't care. And when she's saying, we'll help people back into work, people are on benefits, like it's easy to get on them in the first place. I mean, this is going to actually cut people off of being able to be on disability benefits. She's not cutting
bits?
Their money.
Which bits? Do you know? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not badgering you.
No, it's fine. It's both. It's on PIP is hard enough, and I mean, a lot of people went from DLA to then universal credits, and it's just, I think people have just really had enough when it comes to being on disability benefits, because it's kind of viewed as shameful when it's not anyone's fault, but it feels like we are being attacked because we know we're going to lose these benefits. They're not being cut. They're too hard to get in the first place.
So what do you think is going to happen to you, Holly?
I will probably lose my PIP, and I will probably then lose my universal credits, and then I will have to go on to normal claiming benefits to get a job, and then you have the fight of trying to get someone to employ you. Then keeping that job with your disabilities is really hard, because they don't accommodate. They're not understanding. There is a discrimination against us, and people ignore it, and that's the damaging part, when their attitudes of these people are very smug and they haven't been through these systems themselves. They don't understand, and they don't seem to have this understanding of how hard and how it's affecting people. It's like, well, yeah, no, we'll fix that, don't worry, but everyone knows that it's not that simple.
The battle feels lost from that perspective, doesn't it? It's because, I mean, there are plenty of Labour MPs accusing the Chancellor of making devastating and unacceptable welfare cuts. The figure of 3 million households being left worse off, 250,000 people being pushed into poverty, mean that, you know, voices like yours are being heard. But not at the top of government. So I think something similar has happened on immigration. There's a sense of surrender. There's a sense of right-wing talking points, despite not being rooted in accuracy or evidence, have become so popular that if you are in the business of political pragmatism, then people like you get thrown under the bus.
Yeah, and I think if they were looking for solutions like online work, for options for disabled people, it would show they care. They do want to help us genuinely. But when it's just cut us off and then fund migrant hotels, I mean, can't they cut them instead? But we're British citizens and we're being cut. I mean, that's as honest as it is, even with the new building houses.
You see what you've just done?
To get them out of hotels.
We're
building new houses. Well,
yeah, but unfortunately, the people who agree with you about immigrants also think that people like you should be forced back into work.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think it would be beneficial for disabled people to have different options to go back into work, because it's not easy. But to kind of shove everyone back into work, knowing there's no jobs, knowing how hard it is anyway, and how hard it is to keep a job, they don't actually look at solutions.
And we will have to wait and see where this £1 billion comes from. But you have perhaps unintentionally highlighted why it works politically, Holly, because the same voices that have persuaded you to believe that asylum seekers living in hotels are a reasonable target for even less full and subsidised lives are exactly the same people who've provided the talking points that have left you in the firing line today. But hey-ho, if I was in your position, I'd probably have fallen for it as well. Sian's in Orpington. Sian, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello.
I am in a bit of a tricky position because I have MS, and 3 years ago I had to take early retirement from a job I loved. I've worked for 40 years. I was working with special needs children, loved my job, but I just couldn't do it anymore. The symptoms were too bad. And so I went on to PIP, and I currently qualify for the higher daily living rate, which is about £430 a month. And you know, that obviously helps me financially. But I won't be able to qualify for it, again, because of the 4 points rule. I scored 13...
Can you talk us through... I think you're about to anyway, but for people who aren't fully across that, What is it? Give me an idiot's guide, and I'll play the idiot. You play the guide.
Well, I've got to be really honest and say,
yes.
I'm not even really sure, because I keep thinking I must go and have a look. But just the thought of opening my PIP file again, it just fills me with horror and dread.
Yes.
So I have scored loads of 2s and 1s across the board. I've scored 13 points in total, which qualifies me for the higher rate. I haven't scored a 4. I know that to qualify for a 2, you have to get a lot of support. My husband helps me so much. And so I will end up £430 a month worse off. But of course, I can't work either. And that's already been established.
I'm going to say that I've had a bit of a crash course on this PIP assessment business in the last few weeks. And if I've understood it correctly, I will be very surprised if this 4-point threshold in one category survives and becomes legislation, because multiple sclerosis isn't going to suddenly move into remission or reverse.
You see, James, you say that.
Yeah, I do.
However,
go on. I've got the sense you're about to take my rose-tinted spectacles off me, aren't you?
I was assessed shortly, and I delayed it for such a long time. I didn't want to be a benefit scrounger, inverted commas.
Oh, I'm so
I was
sorry,
brought
that
up
rhetoric.
like that.
Yes, I understand.
And so I applied, and I got the basic rate.
Yes.
And I thought, at the time, my symptoms weren't as bad as they are now, and I thought that was quite fair. Roll on 3-4 years, reassessed, and they took it all away.
Really?
Now, are they effectively saying that my MS has got better? And in which case, it's a miracle.
Hallelujah. Is it the people most exposed, the people who have good days and bad days, do you think?
Yes.
Right.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
It's down to, the assessment process. It's such a lottery, who you get, what their experience is, what their medical experience is. And, I took my case to tribunal. It was overturned and increased. So that's why I'm now on the daily living allowance.
But you need to be very informed and also quite resilient to do that, I imagine.
Oh, it's hideous.
Yes.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you think, why didn't I mention that? And you just feel so sick all the time. And it was so awful under the last government that I actually joined the Labour Party, because I knew, I'd seen the pictures of Keir Starmer and his wedding with his mother in a wheelchair. I knew they were going to look after disabled people. And I became an active member of the local disability group. And, we've worked so hard on all of this, and I love the group, I'm going to say, was a part of, because as of last Tuesday with Liz Kendall's announcement, I can't support a party like that, so I've left the party.
I'm not surprised.
I've resigned from the party.
I mean, it is even those of us who occasionally perhaps suffer from a tiny dose of footballification can't sit here and say £6 billion from disability benefits claimants is good policy or is fair or is reasonable. It seems to be completely at odds with everything that the Labour movement historically has stood for.
Really has. And, they talk about it's not austerity. Well, to me, it's going to be worse than austerity if, as you say, I dearly hope the 4-point thing will go. But if it stays, it's going to be £5,000 a year for me is going to be worse than austerity.
I hope not. But I'm going to be saying that to every caller today. I mean, the average is going to be about 4,500 for 370,000 current recipients. But they also tell me that some families, another 3.8 million families, will see their benefits lifted by an average of £420. What I can't quite get my head around, and I fully appreciate I'm an outsider looking in, whereas you're in the thick of it, is where they think these savings will be made in your house, in your life, as opposed to on a balance sheet or in a speech. When they look at people who are getting by on whatever you get by on and find themselves thinking, oh yeah, well they don't need that and they don't need this and they don't need the other.
And the other thing as well, because obviously I worked with multiple sclerosis for a while, I had to keep reducing my hours. So when I finally left, I was on 15 hours a week. And so I have got a very small pension now, but of course that's affected by my illness when I carried on working.
Right.
The fact that I couldn't work full time has affected my pension. And so, whichever way you look at it, I feel as if I've contributed, I feel as if I've done my bit, and I feel as if...
And you're eloquent.
Thank you.
And well, eloquent and informed. I don't mean...
I am informed, sadly.
And a lot of people in your position won't be, either of those things. And that means they're going to end up even more exposed than you are. And your exposure sounds desperately unfair as well. It is, I mean, a small portion of wait-and-see pie on this, but that figure that no one can get past is not the 5,000 that Sian mentions, or the 4,500 that is the average, but it's the mothership from which all of these figures spring. And that mothership is £6 billion worth of cuts in areas that most of us can't see unless you subscribe to that school of thought. And poor Holly in Cambridge showing us how easy it is to believe tabloid lies about other people who are in receipt of too much public money, even as you are yourself a victim of tabloid lies about people who are in receipt of too much money. I'm not going to apologise for optimism, but I am going to acknowledge that the line between optimism and naivety is very thin. And I'm sure were I in Sian's position, I'd have done exactly what Sian has done. But I mean, you kind of think that somebody like Keir Starmer, with his history, with his background, would be across some of the detail in a way that has reassured him that the worst case scenarios are not going to unfold. But I can't see much evidence of that at this point. And much more importantly, nor can people who are in the front line. It's 10:49.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:52 is the time. We could continue this conversation almost indefinitely because so many people are in the similar situations to the one that we've had described already. But I know that Sheila and others will be returning to similar territory through the course of the day today. It is, I think, the correct angle to take, partly because I'm not really qualified to comment on growth forecasts. I wrote a bit about them in my last book and just pointed out that when they suit your political agenda, they're the most reliable measure on the planet, and when they don't suit your political agenda, they're the most unreliable. So it was usually international forecasts that Brexiters would poo-poo, and then when they occasionally threw up something that Brexiters quite liked, they'd suddenly claim that the IMF was the most reliable financial institution in the history of humanity. The OBR was set up by George Osborne to be independent, but that doesn't mean they're brilliant. A couple of economists I've been in touch with already this morning telling me that one of the main reasons for concern and scepticism is that it's all going to be wrong. And part of the reason for that is the uncertainty generated by Donald Trump, of course, being in the White House and having an attitude to policy that is reminiscent of a shower head bouncing around in the bottom of a bathtub. You've got no idea where or what it's going to spray next. Colin is in Bromsgrove. Colin, what made you pick up the phone?
Well, James, I'm a lifelong socialist. I'm 79 years old, and I'm income support and pension credit. My previous job was a welfare advisor.
Okay, so you know your onions.
So I'm fully well aware of how difficult it is to get pension to get PIP. It was DLA when I was working. They changed it to PIP. And I'm going to disagree with you. What you say, you think they're going to probably change it to from 4 points down. The whole point of them introducing the 4 point on one element store was to exactly reduce the number of people claiming. It's a cynical ploy, and I'm going to read you something that has just dropped in the same moment that you came on, because I think Graham is like you, similarly qualified, but in currently rather than previously. He says, can you please start, in capital letters, stop promoting misinformation about the proposed cut to the welfare budget, repeating these right-wing rumours that it's going to cut disabled benefits. The 4-point rule is coming in, but it will be on a new PIP assessment, and the WCA is being scrapped. Assessment will be different, and there will be a consultation before the change. The 2 women you've spoken to are basing their terror on a belief based on false propaganda. You, James, are helping the Tories frighten disabled people based on rumours and falsehood. I'll defend myself briefly against that because I'm just listening to what people in the firing line are telling me, but I imagine that Graham, who concludes with the line, please stop, would include you in that scaremongering. From a very good place, Colin, but he thinks that we've all got the facts a bit wrong. Well, I mean, why are they going to? The silly thing is, why are they going to introduce it? I mean, okay, they will do a new assessment, but as I understand it, the new assessment, I read it somewhere, I can't say exactly where, I can't remember.
Sure.
The
the mental health side of things is going to be a lot more difficult to qualify under the mental health things. Whereas with DLA, if you got a problem with your disability, that was given more prominence than if you've got mental health problems. Now that changed somewhat when PIP came in. It tended to be the other way around.
Well, I guess it's going to depend on diagnosis, so that they can't undo diagnoses. The problem I think we all have, Colin, and I think this is something Graham and you and me can agree on, is that whatever the new system is, it is targeting savings. And that is absolutely predicated on the idea that some people are currently receiving money that they don't need and don't deserve. And I never know how you pin down that particular claim, how you pin down that problem, because when I open my phone lines, I only ever speak to people like you and your family who clearly do deserve and need what they receive. And yet this narrative, this rhetoric of scrounging is so baked in now to our society because it's been second nature for your average right-wing shock jock for the last 30 years. And not just tabloid columnists, but broadsheets latterly as well. That the idea that there are lots of people getting money they don't need or deserve is almost impossible to get past, politically and rhetorically.
Yeah, that's quite right. Yeah.
So how do we know? How do we know is what I'm saying to you. How do we know, by speaking every day to people like you, how do we know whether or not there are people who are going to be helped back to work and or deprived of things that they don't really need?
Well, there's supposed to be a system in place to encourage people back to work, which is fair enough, okay, yes. if it works. But there are some people, and my wife is one of them because of a disability,
yes,
who simply cannot get a job. It will never be able to work. She wants to work. She is desperate to work. She said to me on many occasions, I feel such a failure because I can't work. She wants to, but she can't. Now, it's going to affect us quite significantly. As I said, I'm on pension credit. And if it wasn't for the fact that I've got an overdraft facility, I'd be going to the food bank.
So you think she's going to see her payments reduced, as far as you know?
Well, yes, unless they get exceedingly generous with the new assessment, and they're not going to do that because there'd be no point.
They need 100 case studies. They really need to start crunching the numbers and explaining it to people. Someone kind enough to forgive me for the PIP coverage on the grounds that it hasn't actually been made very clear by the government. They've got huge communication problems in all sorts of areas. I just felt today wasn't a day for talking about communication problems when people like Colin and all my other callers this hour are suffering. And the phrase I constantly forget, and I'm not going to forget it now for some reason. I can always tell when something's just flicked a switch and it's going to become part of my routine of regularly used phrases. And that phrase is the body keeps score. This is the thing you learn in therapy, the thing you learn about trauma, whether it's physical or mental. The body keeps score. So you heard in Colin's voice, you heard in the voices of all my callers today that they are going through stress. And the body keeps score. That stress has physical ramifications, physical repercussions. And regardless of whether or not some of our contributors actually come out of this much less affected than they think they're going to be, at this point in time, the body is keeping the score. And the score is a win for stress, a win for trauma, a win for trouble. And they've done that. Whether or not they could have alleviated it or avoided it with better communications is a good question to ask. But today, I don't think it's the question to ask it. It's coming up to 11 o'clock. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And we move next into the long-promised conversation about masculine toxicity, or indeed toxic masculinity, the new Netflix drama Adolescence, and the way in which it has, I think, had an unprecedented impact on public discourse.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 4 minutes after 11, and I think we managed, didn't we, to conduct a conversation about a television programme that I hadn't seen, but we did it with regard to issues. earlier this week or late last week, we talked about things like smartphones and the world into which our children can be drawn without us knowing. There's a line in Adolescence, I think it's in episode 4, which is, for me, the most harrowing, actually, the hardest to watch, and the least, for want of a better word, the least enjoyable. Best episode is episode 3. Theatrically, dramatically, but episode 4 is cringe. You know, as in, I can't bear to watch these people's pain. And the line that resonated most with me was when Stephen Graham's character said to his wife, "We thought he was safe because he spent so much time in his room." And that's not phones. I think this is a bit of the conversation that sometimes gets missed, is that an awful lot of this stuff is going to be conducted on computers that are sitting in children's bedrooms. I did a thing. Will you allow me just a brief flight of fancy before we get stuck into really harrowing conversation, potentially harrowing conversation? It won't be that harrowing, I don't think, because there's been time for the dust to settle. But I did a thing last year or the year before about the ZX Spectrum. And it was a wonderful film. The Rubber Keyed Wonder, I think it's called. I'll double check the name for you. You should really watch it. It crowdfunded, a married couple who made it together. Lovely, lovely people. And they were kind enough, because I've obviously talked about my enthusiasm for such matters a bit on air. They were kind enough to invite me to contribute alongside people like Sir Clive Sinclair's family and some of the great games developers of that era. And they put one in my hands. And this is one of the only bits that made the final edit from my contribution. They put a ZX Spectrum in my hand, and I closed my eyes and I could see my teenage bedroom. I could literally see it. I could see the red MFI sort of Meccano metal bookshelves in the corner with my collection of James Herbert novels on the top shelf. I could see the white MFI computer. We went to MFI a lot as a kid. The white MFI computer desk that had little compartments for the tape recorder and the cassettes and the black and white telly on the top of the desk. And I could see the bed, and I could remember the duvet cover. You know that moment? Proust had Madeleines. Turned out I had a ZX Spectrum. Someone put it in my hand. I closed my eyes. I could see my teenage bedroom. But do you know what you couldn't do? You couldn't access anything outside that room. How does that sound to a 14-year-old today? I spent entire summer holidays sitting at that desk playing games. But I couldn't access or communicate with anything outside that bedroom. How does that sound to a 14-year-old today? The idea that the device that you have in your bedroom, and in the case of your smartphone in your pocket, has an absolutely unlimited ability to make contact with anybody, anywhere, anytime. It just struck me, because there was a lovely warmth to that moment. Well, it was a bit of a double-edged sword, because I really liked communing with my teenage self. Unfortunately, I saw it at the IMAX, and I did something which you may have noticed over the years I have a habit of doing, which is getting dressed in the dark. And I should really have realised that if I was making a contribution to something that was intended to be a film, I should have dressed a little bit more smartly. So not only do I look an absolute dog's dinner, but I was also on the biggest cinema screen in Europe looking like an absolute dog's dinner. So it took me a moment to get past the trauma. My body keeps the score. To get past the trauma of seeing myself about 100 feet high looking like an absolute dog's dinner, to focus instead on what I was actually saying. And I just thought of it today because it's the biggest difference between a 14-year-old today and a 14-year-old then, 30 years ago, give or take. In that it didn't matter how much time you spent in your room. And our parents thought that we were defying civilization as we knew. Our parents despaired that we weren't outside more. Our parents thought that we were corrupting our young minds and should have been doing something less boring instead, or more useful instead. But we couldn't make contact with anyone. It was 10 years before you could even get a sort of rubbish modem, and spend hours waiting for that to make some sort of connection with this thing called the World Wide Web. But anyway, so that was the bit that got me. I think Stephen Graham's character is about 10 years younger than me, and the bit that got me was, we thought he was safe. Don't send any jokes about my accent. My Liverpudlian accent's all right, actually. I do not sound Finnish, as someone suggested yesterday. We thought he was safe. And that's the point, when the dad is beating himself up at the end of this drama, which is about a young boy. And there's no spoilers involved in this. It's clear from the start. It's about a young boy who killed a young girl after being exposed to all sort of toxic misogyny online. And the dad is beating himself up in episode 4. And I mean, the final scenes I won't describe to you because they will just tear your heart out and bounce it around the sitting room. But the bit where he says, we thought he was safe. So you do that thing, I wish he wasn't in his room so much, but at least he's safe. I wish he was out playing, I wish he had more friends, but at least he's safe. Because we were safe in our rooms when we were that age. And that will be true for people in their 40s, even some people in their 30s. We were safe in our rooms when we were that age, but he's not safe in his room. I think we may have allowed the focus of the conversation to fall a little bit too heavily on smartphones, when in fact it's what is online, not how you are getting online. I know that the statistic that stops everybody in their tracks is that a young boy in Britain today is more likely to have a smartphone than a father who lives under the same roof that he does. But if you stop and think about it, that's not that amazing. If you say that pretty much every 14-year-old in the country has got a smartphone, don't at me to tell me that you haven't. Then you wouldn't need that many divorcees or broken homes or single mothers to actually make that statistic work. So it's one of those headlines that merits a little bit of deeper thinking, isn't it? But it's still arresting. It's still powerful. And so I've been wondering for a few days what the best way into this conversation is. And I've got two thoughts. The first is that when people say we need to talk more about the toxicity that young boys and men are being exposed to, I hear really big echoes of the immigration conversation. I've spent years being told that we need to talk about immigration, and yet I am living, walking proof that we rarely talk about anything else. Is anyone who thinks that we don't talk about immigration enough in this country has presumably, and for this I envy you, never heard of Nigel Farage or the entire Conservative Party, never tuned into Prime Minister's questions, never opened a newspaper, never turned on their television and never listened to the radio. There's absolutely no way you can conclude that we don't talk about immigration enough in this country, or we don't talk about immigration full stop in this country, unless you're lying or a complete spoon. And I think the same is true of this. We talk a lot. I beat myself up for not moving quick enough on the Andrew Tate stuff, but we were still talking about toxic masculinity. We were still talking about incels. We were talking about terror attacks being committed by young men who've somehow been persuaded by the online lies and grifters who are promising them a glittering future in return for their pocket money. And I don't buy that. I think that's a really silly argument. We don't talk about it. I'll tell you who we don't talk about enough. Women. How many women watching this programme found themselves thinking, yeah, nice of you to wake up to it, lads. Better late than never. But we've been dealing with this shocking behaviour for a very long time. And it took a few days for this to settle, and it's been crystallised helpfully by a column in the Times today by Deborah Ross, which is characteristically funny, but like all brilliant columnists, also successful in making some very serious points. She says, there is no Andrea Tate. Can we talk about that and what's out there in the culture? It reminded me of Me Too, when worthy allies from the manosphere, I don't think I've used the word manosphere correctly there, have I? But anyway, when men like me started sort of, congratulating ourselves on finally recognising the reality of existence for the 50% of the population in this country and pretty much every other one. And so I said to you yesterday, I was conscious of being performatively contrary. Do you remember? I don't want to come on air, and I catch myself doing it sometimes. I can't ask the questions everyone else has asked. We've got to do something new. 99.9 times out of 100, we end up asking a better question, which is why we get the best calls, because we've thought a little bit more deeply about what we're talking about. We haven't just read a headline out of the Daily Mail and invited you to ring in about it. So I gave it 24 hours. Because I want to know what women think about this film. Not men, not boys. Women and girls. I've given it 24 hours so I can be sure that that is what I really want to know. And I thank Deborah Ross in the Times today for crystallising my suspicion that we are completely forgetting about who the real victims of this are. Talking as if the boy who killed someone is the victim. in the context of culture, in the context of online toxicity. If I had a criticism of the drama, it would probably be that we didn't see anything really of the girl's family. I get it, right? It's only 4 episodes, it's 4 hours, and it was in one take, so you couldn't have done. If it was going to be in one take, you'd have had to have an entire episode dedicated to what the girl's family was going through. Instead of, investigation, therapy, aftermath, those 4 chapters of the drama wrote themselves, really. So you couldn't have done that. But it means, and this was the thing that was troubling me right from the start, but I couldn't pin it down because I was completely engrossed by it and absolutely recognise how important it is. So how can we have had a national conversation about a fictional but pertinent murder committed by a boy on a girl, where 120% of the dramatic, political and conversational attention has been focused entirely on the boy? Am I going nuts, or is that a bit weird? 0345 60 What the woman sphere has to say about the adolescence backlash is Deborah Ross's point. It's much more focused and focused differently from the conversation that I want to have. But it comes from the point, of course, that the statistics showing the percentage of women aged 16 to 59 who've experienced sexual assault has risen from 3.4% in 2009 to 4.3%. Rapes have increased 4-fold. Sadistic online gangs of boys blackmailing girls and pushing them towards suicide was reported in the news yesterday after National Crime Agency figures came out. It's the backlash she focuses on. People like the former footballer Joey Barton, whose brother, of course, was jailed for killing a British student of Jamaican descent not long ago, complaining, it seems, about the ethnicity of the actor that was cast. And then a few days later, of course, being found guilty of kicking his own wife in the head. So it's a great piece that you should read, but it's not the conversation I want to have today. The conversation I want to have today is about what women think about this film. Did you watch it with your son? We've all asked ourselves. Stu asked yesterday, shall I watch it with my son? Would you watch it with your daughter? 0345 60 973. Did you watch it with your daughter? The performances were uniformly exceptional. And the sister, actually, Jamie's sister, in episode 4, scaled dizzying heights of thespian brilliance. She did so little. And by doing so little, she did so much. Stephen Graham, for me, if we're going to get lovey-ish about it, is one of the finest actors ever. I find his acting unbelievably brilliant. And he co-wrote it. It was written by 2 men. I just wonder whether it's time to talk about women and girls. Because the public discourse has been about the killer as victim. And he is a victim. He is a victim. But there'll be a hell of a lot of kids exposed to exactly the same influences that he was exposed to, who've never hurt a woman in their life, who've never killed anyone, never attacked anyone. The massive majority of boys growing up in this country are good, nice lads, uncorrupted by the toxic influences of people like Andrew Tate, who's in the news again at the moment in the United States for predictably hideous behaviour. I look forward to Nigel Farage explaining once again why they're part of the same phenomenon. But massive numbers. How many mums are quite happy with how their boy has developed? I don't know. That's not the question I'm asking. The question I'm asking you is this. What do women have to say about adolescence? 0345 60 973. And because I don't necessarily want to spend an entire hour. I know I need to get Stephen Graham on full disclosure, James and Tim and Bob and everybody else. I know. You think we haven't asked? Honestly. Do you know what you like? You like management. When management start getting involved in your guest booking activities, you'll get someone who comes along and says, have you thought about asking for Mother Teresa? And you go, no. Obviously, she'd have to be alive for this to work. Management come up to you and say, have you thought about maybe getting Nelson Mandela on your podcast? Like it's the easiest thing in the world to do. I need to think of someone who's still alive. So someone will come along and say, why don't we get the King on your podcast? I said, oh, yeah, great idea, boss. Nice one. Yeah, I'll make some calls. I'll pull in some favours. I'll get my contacts book out. Hello, Charles. It's Jim. Any chance you can fit me in on Thursday for an hour? I'll come to you if you want, mate. You're quite a big deal. What's what happens? It's what you're like now. Everyone's a bloody manager. Of course I want Stephen Graham on Full Disclosure. But it doesn't work like that. I have to ask him and wait for him to say yes. So if you know him, Stephen, if you're listening, will you come on Full Disclosure, please? Also, the King, frankly. If you're listening, you can come on Full Disclosure as well. 20 minutes after 11. Let's hear some female voices about this very, very male conversation, because I don't think I've heard enough yet. In fact, I'm not even sure I've heard any.
James O'Brien on LBC.
22 minutes after 11. I was only half joking, actually, because oddly enough, the actress who plays Christine, the mother, it could have come on the show today. Someone that looks after her mentioned it earlier, but it's not the conversation that we're having. I'd love to talk to them at another time, but this is about how women respond to this drama. Some of you suggesting it's deliberate. Well, why am I putting words in your mouth? Let's get to the phones. Claire's in Ealing. Claire, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, Claire.
Yeah. So as I was saying to the lady who answered the phone, for me, I think it's kind of twofold. First of all, on the sort of note of the fact that she's not really, the victim or her family aren't really shown, I saw something online that totally changed my perspective on it. Someone said if they showed her anything about her story, people would find ways to say that she was at fault, that she did something that caused it. And then...
It wasn't even a criticism when I said it. It was more of an observation, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it, really. And then someone pointed it out, and I thought, oh, God. And then the second point is... You were right in saying, the third episode is the best. And I think it's also the most important, because if you think about the first episode, he's so young, he looks so lost. And in the third episode, you see his real feelings come out. And it's sort of this crystallization of when he's being observed by other people in public, and specifically by men, he's this sort of young... lost child, and then when he's alone with this woman and he's not being observed by any other men or boys to his knowledge, that's when his true feelings come out. And this is, to me as a woman, that's how I see the issue, is that I've known so many men that I've thought were wonderful and, or great, funny, whatever, and then when you've been alone with them in a certain situation, something changes, and they don't even have to be like some sort of awful criminal. They can just be, there's just something not right, and then you start to feel uncomfortable, and they make a move. But this is what we all feel. This is what we all see. And
it's a different program then for men and women.
Yeah,
it's a completely different experience, because I hadn't really clocked that before, but now you've said it, the word that's popped into my mind is power. He knows his power, even at 14, when he growls at her and when he tries to make her jump. He's exercising power.
Yeah, because she's alone. Yeah. She's vulnerable in that moment. She doesn't have anyone coming to help her, and he's really getting off on scaring her. The way he stands over her and he can see she's scared, it just shows that, even at that young age, he's learning, I've got power here, and that's and he's not being observed, so he can use it to even just inflict fear.
So, a word if you would, and you don't have to, because it's a bit different from the question you rang in to answer, but all the men, well-meaning men, very well-meaning men, hand-wringing and expressing shock at all of this, are not watching the same programme that you're watching.
No, absolutely. I think this is the issue. I think a lot of the times men will see things happen and say, I didn't think my mate was like that. And I do think a lot of the time it's just because they don't even know what to look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
did you learn anything?
No, I spent a lot of time online. Funnily enough, in relation to your last topic, I'm disabled, so I spent a lot of time online listening to LBC and all of that. So nothing was shocking to me. I used to be a police officer. I'm well aware of how it works. So no, but it was just. I think it was just a really, really good introduction to having this conversation. And
that's a good thing. Absolutely, that's a good thing. But yeah, I didn't realise you'd been a police officer, so possibly not being taken by surprise by anything in the film is a consequence of your CV as much as anything else. But thank you, Claire. Laura is in St Austell in Cornwall. Laura, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
First time, long time, one of those. And I have been thinking a great deal about Adolescence in the last week, and just really appreciated your introduction, because I can relate to, not one. I've had quite a different response to the ones that I've picked up around me, and I watched the series initially on my own, and then I watched it with my partner, and by about the third, sort of midway through the third episode, I'd already had these views of the show, quite unsettled by it, but unsettled in a different way to most people. Yeah. By the middle of the third episode, I actually started having a physical reaction. I was so angry. And for me, the anger stemmed from the absence of Katie. And I was saying to your producer, I used to be a literature teacher, and, we would talk about flat characters and round characters and character development. And she is a footnote, if not a villain. And
but is that? Yeah. I mean, you heard the previous caller.
I did,
pointing out that the bigger her role, then the more victim blaming would have gone on.
Yeah, you see, I'm not. Obviously, we don't know. We don't know how she could have been brought in. But
she was blamed a bit for people who haven't seen it. She had been bullying the lad who killed her online.
And she had been bullying him, but I just felt that there wasn't enough nuance in terms of her character. It felt very one-dimensional. She had bullied him, and he got to have a much fuller character with character growth. Again, I was listening to your previous caller. Yes, we did see this very frightening part to him in the third episode, but by the fourth episode, I felt there was some redemption. When he decided to plead guilty, and that felt like quite a redeeming moment for him.
You're not alone. Bev's been into. I think it is very triggering for women. She writes, it makes me angry to watch it. I picked up on the many microaggressions towards women from the different men in the show. The bloke working in the custody centre, the bloke working in the place where Jamie is held until trial was quite brilliantly played, but quite creepy. So I can't argue with you for two reasons. Number one, it would be inappropriate, and number two, you're kind of agreeing with the point I made at the beginning of the hour. But I wonder whether the points that the writers have made are made more strongly by the focus upon the boy as opposed to the victim. I mean, for technical reasons, they couldn't have done a whole hour.
I know.
If everything is going to be done in a single take, which was so dramatically impressive, they couldn't have done an hour in the girl's house, in the girl's family, because it wouldn't have progressed the plot. It wouldn't have progressed the chronological process. It would have been entirely retrospective. So that line there about microaggressions, watching oddly, I think people have learned a lot about what women deal with. But when I say people, I obviously mean men.
Well, I think it depends to the degree to which you engage with the content of the show.
Yeah.
Are you being reflective as you watch the show? Are you wondering, oh goodness, what is it about that man and the way he speaks to the psychologist, which reflects the power dynamics within society? And I think a concern for me is that could there be an unintended consequence with the show of just the show framing power relationships in society and perpetuating them? Whose voice matters? Whose story matters?
I don't. And that well, again, I guess that's 50-50, isn't it? You could say that is a reflection of how society works, and you could say that is a reflection of how society works. In one breath, you're saying it as a defence of the decision, and in the other breath, you're saying it as a criticism of both the decision and the society that works that way. 31 minutes after 11, I made it clear for about a week that we were going to be talking about this at some point. So I'm afraid the spoilers argument, Tony, doesn't really hold true. If you do watch it, you'll realise that none of these are really spoilers. There's no particular dramatic tension to it. It's a story about people. Based upon an event, but there's very, very little room for confusion over the event itself. But I've waited. That's why I've waited before conducting the conversation in a way that presumes familiarity with the plot. Thank you, Laura. It's 11:32. Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
25 minutes to 12. I don't want to jinx anything, and of course, as a testament to the thing I always tell you about, you never know who's listening. But let's just say that the possibility of Stephen Graham appearing on Full Disclosure sometime soonish has risen exponentially in the 30 minutes since I complained about you all suggesting via text that I should get him on Full Disclosure, like I'd never thought of that, honestly. I watched Adolescence, writes Anjali, with my 15-year-old son last week. He was engrossed by it. We spoke about the girl bullying the boy's poor self-esteem, and how his ultimate action wasn't right or justified. My son isn't part of any social media, and we had previously discussed him joining it once he turned 16, but now he says he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to join Snapchat or Instagram, etc. We spoke about how even though the girl was at fault, no girl or woman deserves such treatment. We discussed how boys need someone to speak with, but not Andrew Tate, and that's from a mum, as I say. And Jackie picks up on something that we've been talking about. When women are murdered in reality, James, they're not usually the ones spoken about on the news. Their chosen professions, perhaps, their clothes, but rarely them, especially not when their murderer is known. Even though I don't want to, I know far more about the life and times of her killer than I do about Sarah Everard. Yes, you're exactly right. And Stu, who was in touch yesterday asking if he should watch it with his boy, is 2 episodes in and completely engrossed. Compelling and uncomfortable stuff so far. Sarah's in Hampstead. Sarah, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, how are you?
Very well, Sarah. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, I was in Hampstead. I've actually moved to Nottingham fairly recently, and the good news is that Stephen Graham, I believe, lives in Leicester, so I'm nearer to him than I was. So that's the good news about being here.
Okay.
But I absolutely loved Adolescence. I really, really enjoyed it, and just in terms of the sort of perspective of not seeing anything about the girl and her family, I found that very powerful because I did think about the girl from the beginning. I thought about her family. I've got a 17-year-old boy and an 8-year-old little girl, and I thought about the police when they were going to the door and they knocked on that door. I was imagining the police going to the door of that mother and telling her, that her daughter is dead. And so I was aware of and thinking about that and the impact for her and her family. But I thought it was very clever that it actually didn't give us any of that, because I felt it was more powerful, actually, the message, and much more clear. And as human beings, we could sort of intensely concentrate what was being fed to us, which wasn't too much. It was very harrowing a watch, and it was a difficult watch, but it was just about enough to be able to, I feel, absorb it without it almost being too much information for us to cope with, and therefore not having the impact it had. I feel her being there would have done that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I think you're probably right. I was thinking out loud, and I don't want to focus exclusively on that element of the conversation of the pontification. I think you make perfect sense. A tricky question, easy to ask, not so easy to answer. Did you learn anything?
Yes,
what?
I mean, for me, it was really, really poignant. One of the reasons I moved to Nottingham was to get my children out of London, and particularly I wanted my now 17-year-old boy, and it was quite recent, this move. I wanted him. We were in North London, and I wanted him to be away from London for a bit. I wanted him. I am aware of things for young men. I think this generation I think
it's an online world that essentially entraps Jamie. So how does moving out of London help?
Because I think it's an online world that entraps Jamie. Absolutely, yes.
Because it's set in Liverpool, not Hampstead.
No, absolutely. But there are many different aspects to it. And I think the thing is that the online world bleeds into the real world. You know, this is what this is about. I mean, if the online world only saw online, Andrew Tate, I am unfortunately fairly familiar with, his influence. And that was part of me wanting to come to a gentler place. But with the online situation, I was aware of things. But yes, I have been made more aware of, all of the different colours of the text. You know, the orange emoji, the green emoji.
No, we should mention that as well. That was a real crash course for me. You're absolutely right. I can't remember the full detail of it, but the huge weight that emojis carry in these conversations, in these communications, that was an absolute eye-opener. Lavinia makes a point that by keeping Katie relatively one-dimensional, it made it easier for parents to project their own children onto her, and that gives it a greater empathic heft. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. Sarah, thank you. Caroline's in Gillingham. Caroline, what would you like to say?
I'd just like to very quick point that I was watching the show with my 25-year-old daughter, and she turned to me as it finished, and she turned to me and she said quite profoundly, she said, "There you go, Mum, just another example of male misogyny." And it really shocked me the way that that was the most apparent thing that came out of that for her, because I think there were so many factors, but I think as a young female, she is very, very aware.
So it confirmed her worldview as opposed to...
Yeah.
I mean, for men, I think, for parents, perhaps it's been an eye-opener, but for young women in particular, it's just an endorsement.
She's a really intelligent, doing her master's, she's an intelligent young lady, and it just confirmed everything that she thinks is,
Did you learn anything?
Is out there in society.
It's not set in Liverpool, is it? It's an unspecified English town. Feels a bit East Midlands. I just got confused by Stephen Graham's accent, but that's a hair-splitting exercise. Did you learn anything?
How amazing is he?
It's just beyond amazing.
I did. I am a teacher.
Okay.
And I work primarily. I'm on a year out at the moment, but I've been primarily working with sort of year 5 students, sort of 10 years old.
Right.
And I am horrified by the amount of, at 10 years old, of the amount of material that they are exposed to. And they were quite open with me. We talk about it in class. I promote really open conversation about it, because I think if you do that, you take away almost the secrecy surrounding it. And we would have very open conversations. But I think I'm really hoping what this show opens up is really open conversations between education, between social services, between parents, because this has to be a universal reaction in order to keep our children safe.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, the big question, isn't it, about the discourse? Will men just consume it, file it, and move on, and women like your daughter will continue to live with the consequences of the behaviours and the influences that are discussed. What's extraordinary is how everything that anyone has said in the course of this 43 minutes is open to challenge and nuance. So even describing Katie as having bullied Jamie is questionable, because, of course, he was involved in the distribution of nude photographs or that she had sent to a boy who then shared them. So fighting back, if you like, as Kaza puts it, after being sexually exposed to her peers, how can that be bullying? And you're right. I mean, some people use the word to describe what happened. Is it Doncaster? Is it? Listen, that's not the point. I hate it when you do this with your messages. No one cares where it was set. It wasn't Liverpool, because in episode 4 they talk about the possibility of moving back and decide that there's no point doing so, because, as the sister says, I'd still be Jamie's sister. They'd soon find out. It'd be better for a while, and then it would be worse. But I don't think they actually specify what town it is. Somewhere in the north of England, East Midlands. 11:45 is the time. I'll be ready for Mystery Hour, but I am also very ready for more calls on this topic about what women think of this film. And it is a very different film for women than it is for men, which I should have known. And I kind of did know, but it is fascinating to hear why.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:48 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So much going on here that you can understand why it has generated so much conversation, so much discourse. There's even a double-page spread in one newspaper today analysing the sort of furniture in the room where the therapy session takes place. That's the most haunting episode, as I've said to you. I also note, and this is the less important side of the conversation, you can really tell the difference now between members of the media who are still on Twitter and members of the media who are not. And I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing or even worth pointing out to you. But Deborah Ross's brilliant column in the Times today is largely about the backlash. It's about the apparently huge online anger at the fact that the lad isn't from a broken home. The lad is white. The lad doesn't have an absent father. This backlash saying Jamie would never have come from a home like that. Jamie would not have been white. Jamie wouldn't have had two parents. And this is where the former footballer Joey Barton, found guilty this week of kicking his wife in the head, finds his following, finds his support. This idea that the killer should have been different from and that for me was the whole point of the drama. So it could happen to anybody. The nature, it's like radicalisation. The nature of these incredibly gifted grifters making money and prestige and power out of your children's vulnerability is about universality, about everybody. The reason why it's so powerful, I guess if you are constructed almost entirely of hatreds, then it has the opposite effect. You see someone you can relate to in this position and you hate it because deep down you know it's true. But I didn't realise. I genuinely had no idea that this massive backlash was real and inevitably furious, trashing a fictional story for trying to get inside a problem that wants us to come together and to help with that problem. And that, for these people, is somehow part of the problem. It's insane, right? But I guess if you're not on Twitter anymore, like me, you will have missed this entirely. And do you take that as a reason why you should get back on it in order to find out what's going on in the sewer, or a very helpful reminder of why you no longer spend any time at all in the sewer? I don't know, but it just struck me that Deborah's written a column that demands a degree of familiarity with what's going on in the sewer, and I have none. 11:50 is the time. Speaking of sewers, I tried yesterday to describe to you, and Simon Marks has helped earlier in the week, that in order for a fascist enterprise to succeed, you have to close down journalism. And you do it in a number of ways. Most obviously at the moment, by having people in the Oval Office for press conferences who are part of the project. They're part of the fascist project. In fact, the bloke who asked the question about Volodymyr Zelensky's suit during that attempted punishment beating of the Ukrainian president, he is the boyfriend of another big figure in the MAGA universe, the woman that claimed that forest fires in California had been started by Jewish space lasers. But interventions like that no longer prevent you from promotion and advancement in Donald Trump's United States. She is called Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is currently head of delivering on government efficiency within the House Oversight Committee, and conducted a press conference yesterday, which was attended by the British journalist Martha Kellner, who works for Sky News. So, so I talked to you about how you flood the zone. You get sympathetic, sycophantic, entirely complicit quotes, journalists, end quotes, because they're nothing of the sort, into the room, and you squeeze out the people doing proper news. But on the rare occasions where a proper journalist manages to get through the obstacles, to get through the barricades, the cordon sanitaire, you just attack them. Sky News, you just attack them. This happened yesterday.
Representative, another story that relates to the media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by The Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic. So
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that group?
No, the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant, and I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
No, do you care? Okay,
do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care
and
about
your Vice President and your Defence Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asking.
I'm not answering her question because I don't care about her network. If you would like to ask, I can answer.
Do you have any concerns whatsoever about the complete disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration?
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration and how they ripped our borders open to terrorist, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements.
So you have
I stand by their
comment
statements.
whatsoever about
My comment to you is I'm thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president today, whether he liked it or not. We're talking about NPR and PBS today. We're talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good job? Does Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
Brilliant job there from Martha Kellner of Sky News and from the unidentified American journalist, showing proper solidarity. It plays back onto some of the stuff I was talking to you about yesterday. And it also plays into the toxicity of Twitter, because Marjorie Taylor Greene there, who'd have thought that claiming forest fires had been started by Jewish space lasers would be a career high for the woman, would actually be one of the sanest contributions she'd made to public discourse. And just parroting the kind of nonsense that you see on racist Twitter. You want to talk about rapists, then you'd have to wonder why Conor McGregor, who lost a civil claim to a woman who accused him of rape late last year and was ordered by court to pay her £206,000 in damages, was recently a very honoured guest in the White House, in the Oval Office itself. Of course, a guest of Donald Trump, who himself sought to sue a woman who accused him of rape for libel and lost. You can work out what the ramifications of that legal case were. And Andrew Tate, back in the news today, and reportedly released from house arrest in Romania while accused of rape, people trafficking and sundry other crimes as a consequence of an intervention from Donald Trump's White House. So it's bizarre, isn't it, when rape and racism meet each other, because those of us who are not any more or less disgusted by hideous sex crimes on account of the ethnicity of the person that conducted them will never really get inside the minds of people who are. There's Marjorie Taylor Greene, a big Donald Trump fan, telling ridiculous lies to a British journalist about Britain. Incredible, right? 11:56 is the time. Back to Adolescence. Kelly's in Islington. Kelly, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
So I watched it. I wasn't surprised. I guess I'm very aware of a lot of these things playing out. So the kind of shock, I wasn't really shocked about it. But okay. I thought, I guess, because my daughter's 21, my son's 15, and both of them, they sit down and they show me stuff online, and sometimes they do it for ages, and I'm like, oh, come on.
That's great though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I get to see their world, what they're looking at.
But it's great that you have that relationship with them.
Totally, but I think for me, I think it was really clever that it was a white boy, because I think that I watched that show. My son's black,
right,
and I watched that show and my heart went for the boy, and the situation and I was sad about it all, but I don't think so. I think all of these discussions about society and the grace that is extended to him and his family, I don't think would have been there if he was a black boy. And I think, actually with these kind of issues within the black community, we vilify a black boy, but then when we've got a young white boy, in this sort of situation, we've got grace for him. Our heart goes to him and the family. So I guess my lens as a woman is that actually, as a mother, I just thought it's, we've got these societal issues that are impacting, and they're, even just our kind of leadership.
How incredible that you come on after that clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's a poster girl for the idea that people commit certain types of crimes precisely because they are from certain ethnicities. And it's literally the argument she's making, even as men accused or even guilty of these kind of crimes populate the very top of the American administration and have season tickets into the Oval Office, because this is a story about men and boys. But if you're a racist and you think that some crimes are committed by black boys because they're black and not because of any other factors, any other influences, any other outside exertions, then you're going to hate this story. And that's what you've just described. So it works better because the kid is middle-ish class, comfortable,
good family,
secure, good family, home. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of, it's frustrating. I guess it's frustrating because that same grace isn't extended to kind of black families. But I welcome the narratives that we're looking, at these kind of societal issues that are affecting our young people in so many ways. And I think it's complex and there's so many things going on.
And so the more every man the boy is, the more powerful the drama becomes. The more people can see that child and think of their own son, the more powerful it becomes. And that just becomes a question of proportion, not even of disproportionate media coverage. Because you're right, if it was a drama about a black kid caught up in similar crimes, it would not have resonated anywhere near as much as it has done with the broader population. It should have done. But we're describing the world that we inhabit, aren't we, Kelly? Not the world that we would like to. It's just coming up to 12 noon, and it is Thursday. And you should know what that means by now. It is time for Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction that is ordinarily not available anywhere else on your radio dial. If you don't know what it is, it's a little bit different from the other 14 hours of the week that we spend together, but some people consider it to be the most fun of all of them.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 4 minutes after 12 and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we turn our attention next to the mysteries that you want solving. And there's a topic for tomorrow, actually. What would the legacy of Just Stop Oil be as they announce an end to their activism? But I want you to ring in with questions, mysteries, riddles, whatever it may be. The question that you have been unable to find an answer to, but which you know must have one. You're not the only rule this hour. Well, they're kind of 1.5 rules. You're not allowed to look stuff up. That's a rule. Half a rule is that I don't do motoring questions. But over the years, we've had a quite philosophical contemplation of what precisely defines a motoring question. All you need to know is this. Ring in with a question, someone else rings in with an answer. My favourite contribution of the week wins a Mystery Hour board game. I kid you not, so popular is this programme, this feature, even dare I say this presenter, that it has spawned its... Oh, right, that's pushing it. It's spawned its own board game. And it could be yours. Full terms and conditions for that, because it does qualify as a proper competition and is therefore subject to all the correct rules and regulations, can be found at lbc.co.uk. If you want to bypass the competition and just buy one, you can go to mysteryhour.co.uk and help yourself, fill your boots. It is 5 minutes after 12. I think we'll just crack straight on, shall we? Just pile straight in. Phone lines are open. If you can't get through, don't complain. Just wait until I say goodbye to someone, and then just judicious use of redial, all right? Just press redial and see what happens. Roy is in Honiton. Roy, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on, Roy.
So give you a bit of context. I was chatting to my 2-year-old grandson the other day called Ralph.
Oh, yeah.
And who loves instantly listening to your show.
Is he?
Obviously, yeah. He's got good ears at his age.
That's nice. Glad to hear.
we were chatting about saving money, and I mentioned to him about when he gets pocket money, you should put it in a little piggy bank. And he says, nonna, because my mum was Italian, so he calls you nonna. He said, why do we call it a piggy bank? And I said, I tell you what, why don't we ring James O'Brien? He'll be able to tell us that. So why do we call a piggy bank a piggy bank?
Well, we've done this before. And that's fine, because we're doing it so long now. It's quite nice to circle back to stuff sometimes, and then we can see whether any of us...
What's the relation between the pig and a bank? It's kind of weird, isn't
it? There are two possible answers to this, and I'll tell you when I've finished which one I think is correct. The first had something to do with clay, like a pig clay or something like... I forget precisely what it was, but it was because of what it's made of, that gave it its name. I don't think that is the correct answer. I think the correct answer is that the pig was associated with good luck over the years, and therefore it just became the basis for the vessel, the sort of containers into which money would be put. They find them in archaeological... I mean, I don't know, he's probably a bit young for this, but they found them in all sorts of archaeological digs going back 1,000 years, I think, or thereabouts. So it's not new and it's not British, but it's to do with the pig being a symbol of good luck, and therefore you keep your money in it, you get richer, I suppose.
Okay.
You buying that?
Yeah,
it is the answer. Qualifications, we've done it before, and this is one of the rare occasions where I can actually remember what we've said. If there's a steward's inquiry, it'll be someone claiming it's got something to do with the clay. But they're wrong, and I'm right.
That sounds good. Let's see if anybody disputes that. I'll go with that.
Right. Well, what's your grandson's name? Ralph.
It's Ralph.
That's a lovely name. So when you play this when you play this back to him, we'll all say, "Hello, Ralph. How are you today?" and Grandad's got you an answer to your question, and it gets me a round of applause. But I'm going to share it with Ralph. So half of this round of applause is for you, Ralph. There we go. I've got the pig spelt with a Y, a certain type of clay, but it's not the answer to this question. And remember that Roy will be able to play that back to Ralph, because you can pause and rewind live radio on Global Player, and also because you get the full programme downloadable as a podcast a little later this afternoon, as well as the hour of edited highlights, the James O'Brien Daily, which is a relatively new addition to the stable. Peter is in Orpington. Peter, question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on, Peter.
So I've got a dog, and I hate leaving her on her own in the flat.
Yeah.
So sometimes I will put music on the TV,
yeah,
or I'll just put a cartoon on or a bit David Attenborough. But my question is, does music affect the mood of animals?
Well, you think it does already, obviously, don't you?
Well, she doesn't react to any of it.
So it doesn't make any difference at all?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not there.
But can't you tell when you get back?
Not really.
No,
she's usually by the front door waiting for me to come in.
She's going to go nuts. So you're doing it in hope rather than expectation.
Yeah.
And is your hope justified? They must have a reaction of some sort. Do you know what mine does? It's quite bizarre, and it doesn't happen very often because you don't get that many fire engines going past. So she's fine with ambulances and she's fine with police cars, but if a fire engine goes past with its siren on, she joins in.
But they're a different kind of tone, aren't they, fire engines?
Yeah, they must be. She literally joins in almost like a impressionist. She gets it almost exactly perfect. A fire engine goes past and she's off doing the fire engine siren.
But that would be more pitch as opposed to tempo and stuff. So if I put classic on and jazz on, say I put rock music on, would I come back and she's like throwing the TV out my window or something?
Do dogs like music is what you're asking?
Yeah, does it affect their...
And do they like it like we like it, as you say, where a different music will have different impacts on mood? I don't know how you'd ever know. How would you ever know? Secret camera? See if he's dancing when you're out?
Really know.
I mean, I don't, because you can't ask them. Unless you're Dr. Dolittle, I suppose. Right, it's on the board, Peter. Dogs and music. Do dogs like music? Does music affect dogs? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. Helen's in Manchester. Helen, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on, Helen.
I keep walking past building sites, and before anything's really
That's the dog. It's not a fire engine just gone past, has it?
No,
in the back?
just a dog.
Okay, carry on.
And whenever the site has been cleared, they do tend to be brownfield sites, so I don't know if that's relevant.
Yes.
But they seem to clear the site, and then the first thing they do seem to build a wall which is maybe 5 or 6 feet across with a small double glazed window in, and maybe 6 foot tall.
What, just a wall?
That's it. just a wall. It never gets connected to anything. It's not.
Are you sure? I've walked past a few building sites in my life.
I've seen 3 different building sites in my local area have done this recently.
And
I just want to know what that wall and that window is about.
A brick wall with a window in it, stood in the middle of nowhere. Right.
It's always at the edge of the site.
Okay, wait there. I'm just going to do a quick survey. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever seen this? Dan? Has Dan ever seen this? Have you ever seen this? A wall on a building site with no? Becca? Has Becca ever seen this? I think you're hallucinating, mate.
Honestly, three different building sites.
Right.
I've seen them do this.
Could it be...
I'm going to start taking pictures.
Well, you're going to have to, because I don't believe... Well, I do believe you, of course I do. But could it be that they are testing bricklaying skills?
That's the only thing I can think. But then it's, well, why would they do it?
On a building site?
Yeah. And also, why not build something with a purpose?
Send the apprentice over there when he's busy, when he's got back from buying a new bubble for the spirit level.
The only other thing I could think
Go on.
is it's some sort of something maybe to do with standards, that they build it at the beginning so that all the builders who come to site know this is how it should look.
There's one other possibility.
But that seems silly too.
There's one other possibility.
Go on.
They could be putting on productions of A Midsummer Night's Dream. No, that doesn't work, does it? Because the wall is played by a human being in A Midsummer Night's Dream. But I've got nothing. I've got nothing. The wall, Pink Floyd fans? No, nothing at all. I wouldn't open with it. I shall find out for you, Helen. It is on the list.
I'm hoping there's a builder out there who doesn't think that I'm crazy. And
well, I'm sure there is, but whether or not they can answer your question or not, only time will tell. 13 minutes after 12. Thank you, Helen. Taff's in Cardiff. Question or answer, Taff?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
Why are aircraft hangars called hangars? I'm ex-RAF. I've been in loads of them. There's never anything hanging in them.
Yes. That's a good question. I have to say, when I introduced you then as Taff from Cardiff, I thought you were going to come on with one of the most pronounced Welsh accents that we've ever had on the programme.
Oh, sorry to disappoint.
That's better. That's better. Seriously, you're in Cardiff, you're called Taff, and you come on sounding like a sort of minor member of the royal family or something.
Oh, thank you very much.
Why are aircraft hangars called hangars? What else would we call them? Large sheds.
Yeah.
Aircraft
sheds.
Sheds.
Well,
aircraft sheds.
People
aircraft
call them
shelters.
sheds in the RAF.
Do they? Okay, I like that, because it's not a word you come across anywhere else, is it? Except for spaceships, I think, go in hangars as well. Spaceships and aeroplanes.
Yeah.
Sounds like an album title. I shall find out for you. It's coming up to 12:15. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So I've done piggy banks, but as ever, everything on Mystery Hour is open to a steward's inquiry. Do dogs respond to music? Why does Helen keep seeing walls on building sites that serve no apparent purpose? And why are hangars, the buildings in which we keep aeroplanes and spaceships, called hangars? It's coming up to 12:15. Those questions and more before 1 o'clock today.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:16 is the time. On we go. Stuart's in Watford. Stuart, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
So we had a big family discussion during the week about dreams.
Oh, yes.
And when you have a dream, right, it's never like a split second.
You've got to have a dream.
Yes. It's never like a split second, bang, you're locked in a box, or you're locked in a room, or you're trying a handle or something. It always plays out like a film.
Yeah.
It's always like, sometimes it could be an adventurous story. But how the heck can your dream just conjure up a story? And do you know what I mean? How can it play out? How can it have a whole complete story? How does it know to do that? Do you know what I mean? It's never like a split.
I don't know what you mean. I mean, you're saying how the dreams work, really.
Yeah. Where does that story come from? It's always a story.
It's your subconscious.
Yeah. I know, obviously.
Well, I don't understand what you think it should be like, or what you're surprised it isn't like.
Right, so it's like you're sitting down watching a film. There'll always
I know what it is like, but what do you think it should be like?
That's what I was saying. And another quick one. How come you
haven't even answered the last one? So
how come you always start the show with question or answer when no one's asked a question?
Everybody knows why, except you. So why? What do you think they should be like? Dreams, instead of being like, where does the confusion come in? Because no one is confused by dreams except you and your family.
But why is it always a story? Where does that story come from? How come the brain makes up?
But what do you
story?
think it should be like?
Well, a story, obviously.
No, but it is a story. So the thing is, you have a dream and you go, why is it like that? And not like what?
But how does the brain know to conjure up a story?
This is ridiculous. Because it's coming from your subconscious. It's a no, mate. No offence. It's not even a question yet. It's just a selection of words in a random order.
Where does that story come from?
Your
how
subconscious.
Does the brain know?
Your subconscious.
Yeah, I know it's subconscious, but how does it know to tell the story?
It doesn't. You can't impose sentience on a dream. Dreams don't know anything. Your subconscious is telling a story to you, essentially.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Look, I'm going to ask for the final time. What do you think it should be like instead?
Well, why is it not just a second scene where you're just trying to open the door?
But then you'd ring me and say, why is it like that?
Please just ask the question. Put it out there.
I'm going to... I mean, I can't believe you got on air, frankly. Who put him through? Was it you? So, no, I mean, do you understand that question? I don't understand that question. It's on the board, Stuart, so fingers crossed. Jazz is in Southampton. Jazz, question or answer? I'll tell you what, mate. In order to be the worst question of the last two, you're going to have to go somewhere absolutely unprecedented. So there is no pressure on you whatsoever. Carry on.
I'll try my utmost best. Right, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Is it cost effective to make a 1 penny piece?
In other words, how much does it cost to make 1p?
Yeah, exactly. Would it cost more or to actually make it rather than what it's actually worth?
I mean, you'd think not, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, of course you would, because at the end of the day, yeah.
I can remember this from something has come up recently. I think the answer is no. I think because it depends on the cost of raw materials, labour. There's a few variables. I think I read. Are they not going to abolish it? The penny?
Because they abolished the halfpenny pence.
The halfpenny pence.
Oh, sorry, half penny.
The halfpenny. The halfpenny.
Yeah, the halfpenny. Yeah,
they did indeed abolish the halfpenny pence.
Because if you think about it, you have the 99p store, where a lot of people used to go, and then you would have to give a penny back. I got it in my head that A, it costs more to produce than it's worth, and B, they are phasing them out. But I can't claim any knowledge, definitive or qualification on this, so I'm going to put it on the board. Does it cost more than a penny to make a penny? Yeah, exactly. That in a nutshell.
In for a penny? In for a pound. 0345 6060 973. Thank you, Jazz. I like that question. I had a dream about it. No, I'm joking. Jim's in Glasgow. Jim, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on.
About 60 years ago, when I was a youngster going to school, I don't know if this is a Scottish thing or not,
right.
But to make it
school? No, we've got them down here as well.
Right, no, the question's a bit of, is it a local thing? When my mother or my grandmother were combing my hair, they obviously put a parting in your hair.
Yeah.
My mother would call it a shed.
A shed?
She would say to me, which side do you want your shed?
Putting a shed in your head?
Putting a shed in the head.
I've not heard that before. I mean, it could have just been your mum. It may not even be a Scottish thing.
No, I think it's because my grandmother used to say that as well, and I heard my auntie saying that. If you put a shed in it, obviously it means a parting. Yeah, it's a shed.
I like that.
A shed.
I like
that.
Put
a shed in it.
Put a shed in it. Put a shed in your head. Have you got enough hair? Have you got enough hair for a shed these days, Jim?
I've still got plenty.
Have you? All right.
Yeah.
No one likes to show off, mate.
I'm Scottish. I'm tight-fisted.
I'm not giving it away.
I'm not giving it away.
Oh, I love it. So why do Scottish people, or possibly just Jim's family, talk about putting a shed in your hair when it is what we would ordinarily refer to as a parting? Does a penny cost more to make than a penny? Why are the buildings in which we house aircraft and spaceships, I suppose spaceships are aircraft of sorts, so aeroplanes and spaceships, called hangars, of course, with an A, not like a coat hanger, a hangar. What are these walls Helen keeps seeing on building sites, and do dogs like music? James is in Hackney. James, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, James.
So, I'm a bricklayer and have been for a number of years.
Oh, yes.
And those walls that lady was seeing, I don't think she's going mad.
Oh, good.
They are what bricklayers build prior to the client and the architect agreeing the type of brick. They're called test panels.
Oh, wow.
So one of my first jobs when I was a young bricklayer was building those test panels, and they might have a different colour bricks, different type of pointing. They might all be one colour. And then before any brick is laid on site, they come and have a check, see if they like the finish, the style, the pointing, and then they go ahead with the job. So that's why you'll see those sometimes at the end of the job. They're still there.
And the window is in there for the same reason, just to...
to see what the window looks like. There might be a soldier course above the window, or a brick on edge, or an arch. I mean, that's the only thing I can think it is.
Well, it must be that. What else would it be? Like
It's
a test
gotta be that.
panel? A test panel.
It's exactly that, a test panel. And obviously you always get your best bricklayer on there. That's why they just send me on there.
That's 2 weeks running.
Good,
We had a bricklaying question last week as well, I think.
You did.
There's a lot of brickies listening. Which is
There's
good.
a lot of bricklayers.
Next time I need some work done, I shall head back to the inbox. I like that qualification. How long have you been a brickie?
I've been a brickie for 35 years, and I also teach local college as well.
I can't say fairer than that. Round of applause for James, please. Lovely work. Which reminds me, actually, I don't know if he's listening or not, but my friend Matthew is a bricklayer, and he has just had surgery. So if you are listening, mate, I hope everything's gone brilliantly well. And if you're not listening, then you won't know about this, and I'll drop you a text when I come off air. But he's a brilliant bricklayer. 24 minutes after 12 is the time. Gregor is in Kilburney in North Ayrshire. Gregor, question or answer?
Hello, James. It's a question.
Carry on.
The phrase "red sky at night, shepherd's delight; red sky in the morning, shepherd's warning." I would like to know the meteorological reasoning behind that, the science behind it.
I would too. I've got a feeling it's got something to do with pressure. Does that make any sense?
Quite possibly. I mean, it's the east and west that I'm a little confused at, because I presume it's something to do with the sun setting in the west and that having an effect on the refraction of light through the clouds and kind of, wind direction and things like that. But I can't work it out.
Right. I mean, it's not necessarily scientifically accurate, is it? I mean, not in the sense that
I'm sure there are exceptions.
Yeah, precisely. Not every red sky is going to mean it'll be nice weather the next day, and not every red sky in the morning means it's going to be bad weather for the rest of the day. But there'll probably be enough truth in it to have justified the proverb or the idiom, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And it must be pressure. It must be something that a weatherman would use to tell what's going to happen tomorrow. But it's a visual manifestation of something that you would otherwise need scientific instruments for.
Quite possibly, but I'm also wondering whether there's a geographical element to it, in the sense that it applies. I presume the phrase comes from the UK, but does it apply in other countries as well? We obviously have the Gulf Stream here.
Rouge ciel à nuit. That's all I've got. I don't know the word for shepherd or delight. Rouge ciel rouge, un ciel rouge à nuit, le delight de la shepherd. No, I don't know. Right, I'll find out. I like it. What is the scientific explanation for red sky at night, shepherd's delight, red sky at morning, shepherd's warning? Pavan is in Ealing. Pavan, question or answer?
Question, please. Hi, James.
Hello, Pavan.
So, in game shows, you have that holding room behind stage.
You do.
Or backstage. Why is it called the green room?
I know this.
Oh no!
Why does everyone do that? Pavan?
Yeah, because you're just super brainy,
it's
right?
It's not that.
So
I've been doing this for years. It's come up so often, and also I was an actor in a previous life.
There we go. That's more acceptable.
That's where it comes from.
Okay, hit me.
So, the lights. If you're on stage, the lights in the green room would be the least invasive light. Is green. So if you've got a room, this is true. Why are you shaking your head? Keith's shaking his head. Have you ever been an actor? Have you ever played Horatio? Have you ever played Menenius in Coriolanus? Have you ever played Antipholus of Ephesus in the Comedy of Errors? No, you haven't. And that means that when people come out of the green room into the wings, the light won't spill out onto the stage because it's green light in the green room.
Oh, this is interesting.
Thank you.
But can't they put filters for that?
Yeah,
sort
they
of
can
thing
now, but it doesn't even apply in a television studio, does it? Because the green room might be up 200 yards away from.
I was in a television studio. That's exactly it. That's when I thought, hold on, this doesn't add. This is an old thing, but it's just stuck.
What were you on? I mean,
QI.
What program? Not drugs.
I was watching QI.
Oh, you were watching it. I thought you were on it. You said
in the audio. No.
Oh,
sorry, I was.
Okay.
I had a chance to go to the green room, but it wasn't green, and I thought, is it a colour thing? But it makes more sense with what you're saying.
I think it is. I think it is one of those things that has never been definitively established, but this is the most popular answer to the question.
I think I'm going to have to accept it. I want to question you, but you did it with such...
Well, I'm taking a round of applause. Is it nice to sit in the audience on QI?
Yeah, it's good fun.
I can
it's
imagine
really
it
fun.
is. How long do they film? How long are you there for?
A couple of hours.
Really? Just to get the half hour of the programme out there?
I guess that's with most programs, isn't it? Which you only realise when you're in there.
No,
but
absolutely. I like
it
that.
was good fun.
Thank
Thank you so much, James.
No, thank you so much, Pavan. I could be subject to a steward's inquiry, but I frankly doubt it. Ravi is in Harrow.
Hello, hi. Sorry, a bit nervous because it's the first time I'm calling.
It's only me.
I listened to the person who was asking about why
Hang
we
on,
dream.
slow down, Ravi. Question or answer,
Sorry.
Ravi?
Sorry, answer.
Carry on, Ravi.
Yeah. So it's kind of an answer, but the thing is, I feel like the guy who was asking about why we dream, I feel like he was posing an excellent question, but I feel like maybe he didn't get like the airtime he deserved, because this is a really hard question, and actually there's some really interesting reasons why we dream. So in a nutshell, I think what happens is that during the day we do a bunch of things. But it's when we dream that we learn to properly compartmentalize those activities and actually kind of integrate them into our physiology in a deeper sense. So, like one of the theories that exists says that like the problem solving and creativity angle of it is that you essentially get to simulate the ways that you would behave in a situation that you're dreaming in a dream in a kind of risk-free environment. You're able to kind of learn from what you're doing. You're able to
I think you're a very nice man, but
thank you very much.
But you're answering a question that he definitely didn't ask.
Maybe my impression was that he was trying to understand.
Maybe, but trying being the operative word, and failing miserably being the silent part of this sentence.
All right. I just thought maybe the listeners might benefit from, just the...
That's why I said you're a very nice man. I could tell that was what your motivation was. So, I mean, that's one theory, is in that you're kind of gaming behaviours in a risk-free environment. The others, I mean, go deeper. Freud would go down a relatively different path when he's talking about the significance of dreams, and then Jung would go down a different path again. But the fundamental link between the conscious and the subconscious, as in experiences being replayed or reinterpreted through the dream, is why that they would come across as a story, which is the question Stuart was asking, that they have a form of narrative arc because they are prolonged behaviours.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think the narrative arc aspect of it gets really deep, because it's actually, the narrative arc isn't just how we dream, it's actually how we think, it's how we learn. Yes. That's why, So the answer to, if we were to allow Stuart an actual question, which he never really got to, the answer would be because that is how our brain works. It works in narrative arcs. I feel like maybe a more fair answer would be we don't really know.
Yeah, well,
there's a lot of interesting stuff to find out about it.
There is also that. What are your qualifications, Ravi?
I'm a software engineer.
Oh, wow. And, I mean, hang on. What are your qualifications to know about dreams?
None whatsoever. I've never done biology academically in any respect.
But it doesn't need a real qualification. I mean, you could almost tell me why you're interested in it.
Because I'm interested in anything that doesn't make sense to me.
There we go.
They're one of the items in the very high on that list.
Trying to make sense of the nonsensical. That's you do my holiday cover. Give Ravi a round of applause. What a lovely man. Thank you. Tara suggests that I didn't understand what Stuart was trying to say, and that therefore is my bad. No, Tara, listen back, press rewind, go back now. Stuart didn't understand what Stuart was trying to say. Here's Amelia Cox with the headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:35 in the latest bulletin of Be Careful What You Wish For. Here's a headline that is in the United States at the moment. Florida debates lifting some child labour laws to fill jobs vacated by undocumented migrants. Just can't take your eyes off it at the moment, can you? But some days we have to, and some days we want to. And today is one of those days. Lots of people recognising Jim's question about having a shed on your head. Depending on which side your hair was parted, you'd say, which side do you want your shed? I've got one thought that might fit into that, but it's too late now. If I don't say it at the time, then I have to forever hold my peace. Miriam is in Ascot. Miriam, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
Yeah, it's about the hanger.
Oh, yes.
So, in fact, hanger. I was with my husband in the kitchen, and I said, how do you spell hanger in English?
Yes.
And he said with A-R.
Correct.
So, hanger is hangar en français.
Hangar.
Therefore, hangar. Therefore, they have that in farms, they have that in a lot of places, and it's quite a basic building with pillars, posts, and a roof. They don't always have doors or metal doors, and they're there to shelter crops or equipment or planes or other farm vehicles. So that's it.
Is it a barn?
Yeah, it is like a barn. Yeah, exactly.
But do you have a word for barn, or is hangar the word for barn?
Good question. I would have said hangar.
So la vache est dans l'hangar.
Non, pas la vache.
What? Why not?
No, barn, then it's another
la grange.
word.
What about l'écurie? L'étable.
L'étable, c'est très bien.
Ouais, merci. Yeah. So
Oui, exactement. So you wouldn't say l'étable is going to shelter planes,
no.
But you have a lot of hangar in farmlands and all that to put all the tractors and all that sort of thing.
That would be called an hangar, so it's just a French word that we've adopted.
Yes, I think so. I would think so.
Sounds good to me, Miriam. Question, qualifications.
Share the same birthday as you.
Round of applause. Bon anniversaire. Qualifications French. I think we could all work that out, couldn't we? Richard's in Loughton. Richard, question. I've got a couple of phone lines free, actually. 0345 60973. I think there might be room for a challenge on the green room question. We still got the red sky at night question. We've still got the hair parting stroke shed question. We've still got the hangars we've done, walls and building sites we've done, dogs and music. And what's that say there? What have I written down there? What did Jazz ask me about? The 1p. Does a 1p cost more than a p? Does a penny cost more than a penny? Richard's in Loughton. Richard, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, mate.
Before I carry on, I agree with you about Adolescence, and the third episode is absolutely incredible.
Crazy, isn't it?
But my question is, absolutely incredible. My question comes from my 7-year-old son.
Oh, yeah.
He wants to know, why do sloths move so slowly?
It's a good question. They're beautiful. They're so cute, sloths. Have you ever seen a sloth's face? They're crazy, aren't they?
Or even a baby sloth. They're very cute.
They are. I wonder what they're called. I think you'll either... The world is divided into people who will get this immediately and people who won't.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a really silly question. But,
no, it's not.
7-year-old, so.
But I think... No, it's a brilliant question. But I think the answer is because they can.
But surely if you sort of take a comparatively similar sized animal, like, say, a monkey...
Yeah.
They can move that slow as well, but rarely do you see them move that slow, and you never see...
No, because they have to move faster in order to escape predators, or in order to find food, in order to... So
would a sloth not have any predators?
No, I don't believe... Well, I mean, if it does, there wouldn't be any sloths, would there?
Yeah, I guess that's a very good point.
So, just imagine, if you can, for a moment...
Yep.
That somehow you were able, in Loughton, to have immediate access to infinite food supplies. You were built in a way that meant you're never going to fall out of the tree. You digest very, very slow. Everything you do is very, very slow. And you've got no predators. You'd never get out of bed, mate.
True.
And that is why sloths move so slowly, because they can.
It's a good theory.
It's not a theory. It's Occam's razor. It's the only possible answer to the question that accommodates all of the available facts.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not taking it. Do you know they're quite good at swimming? But I think do. Yeah, but I think they do that for fun.
Okay. Do they swim slowly?
Very. Why do sloths move so slowly? Brilliant question from the world of natural history. My answer at the moment has come from the world of philosophy. So somewhere between the two, there might be a better answer. Why do sloths move so slowly? Because they can. Leaves don't run away, Steve reminds us. And they obviously don't have predators. If they did have predators, I mean, it's a good line, but it's also true, there wouldn't be any left. They would be like the dodo or something that has been hunted to extinction. And the humans don't want them either. So... apparently, eagles and ocelots hunt sloths, but not very successfully. Right, you're on the board. So why do sloths... what's your boy's name? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
Yeah, no, it's Zachary.
Zachary. We'll find out for Zachary, Richard, not for you, because it's his question. Why do sloths move so slowly? 12:41. Eddie's in Rochester. Eddie, question or answer? In your own time, Eddie. Eddie!
It's about copper coins.
Oh, yes. Carry on.
Yes. A copper coin used to cost a lot more to make than it was worth.
Oh.
So people started shipping them out of this country in giant shiploads and melting them down in another country and making a profit.
Right.
So therefore, what they call, the Bank of England calls the recipe for making copper coins, which was enshrined in law and said they had to be at least 97% copper. They got a law passed, enshrined in law. You know,
was it enshrined in law?
Yeah, I mean, the Bank of England couldn't legally put any less than 97% copper in them. That's
Right.
why they were worth more.
Yes.
So they had to have the law changed, which in time they did. So now they're made out of 99% steel with just a bit of copper on the outside.
You put me in a very uncomfortable situation, Eddie.
Yeah?
I'm going to have to correct you on a few points.
Yep.
It's not steel, it's zinc.
Well, if you get a magnet...
It's 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper.
I don't think it is, because...
I promise you
I do know my physics. If you get
chemistry.
a magnet...
Yes.
If you put a magnet on old copper coins,
Yes.
they ignore the magnet. But if you put that same magnet by new copper coins,
Yeah.
they jump to the magnet.
Okay. Well, we'll let that one stand. The point is that since 1982, pennies have no longer had to be, and it was 95% copper, not 97%.
Oh, right.
But that's all right. Easy mistake to make.
I have got letters from the Bank of England and the Treasury separately about this.
Why?
Because I investigated it.
Did you?
Because
Yes.
years ago, for 49 years, I ran the Eddy Bank, which was like a little bank at work. Now, there's a reason for that, but I'm not going to go into all that.
Okay.
That's history. But the point is, my customers started complaining to me that the copper coins were, in those days, a drink. You could get a drink for 2p coin.
From the machine.
But now,
From the machine.
coins I was giving them, they wouldn't work the machine.
Ah.
See,
That's not really relevant to the
machines.
95% versus 97% copper rule that changed in 1982.
Yeah, but it stopped the coins being useful at work.
Yeah, they couldn't
and
get
I was
them.
getting the blame.
They couldn't get them from the machine, so
I
you
got
wrote to the bank.
I got letters from the Bank of England and letters from the Treasury.
Why were you getting the blame? Did they think you were making your own 2p pieces at home and ripping them all off?
No.
You'd have to
that
make
is
a lot
bit
of 2p
illegal.
pieces to turn a
That is-
profit.
No.
What? Hello?
I didn't do anything illegal.
I know.
I thought maybe the Bank of England were.
But what were they accusing you of, your former colleagues at the Bank of Eddy?
Well, because the coins I was handing them didn't work, they weren't fit for purpose.
It may be that you're right, actually. They may have had a steel core subsequently because you've done the magnet test.
I did the magnet test all those years ago.
Yeah, now the problem is that let's say everything you've said is true, but it hasn't worked. They still cost more to produce now than they do than it is actually. I mean, think about it, mate.
Well, they're very mass-produced.
Yeah, I know, but think about it. I mean, to cost 1 penny, it costs about 20p to make a penny. Controversial.
Well, all I'm saying is they did cost a hell of a lot more when they were all copper.
What can you make them for, Eddie?
I'm not going to tell you I made any, am I?
No, not on live. Not on live radio. Not on live radio, Eddie.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
the police will have my ticket.
You're telling me. I'm going to give you a round of applause and we'll pretend this conversation never happened.
Okay.
Round of applause for
Yeah.
Eddie. Qualifications, used to run a bank at work for reasons that he can't go into now, but he's definitely never, ever, ever minted his own coins. I think it costs, because I've done it before, about 20p to make a penny. And that is why, in America, Donald Trump's already announced that they're going to phase them out. Fascinating question, brilliant answer at 12:46.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:49 is the time. Radio Gold, that. Or possibly copper. I stole that joke off Tom. Well played, Tom. Questions that still need answered. Why do sloths go so slowly? What is the scientific rationale behind Red Sky at Night, Shepherd's Delight? Why do we talk about putting a shed on your head when parting your hair? I think that Eddie went absolutely above and beyond the call of duty in answering the question about pennies. He was right as well. I was wrong. It was steel now. It was zinc until about 1982. I didn't look any of this up. How dare you accuse me of such things? I know it all. Done the dreams, thanks to Ravi. And the hangers. What was the name of the nice French lady, Keith? Miriam, of course it was. She's got the same birthday as me, you know. Did you know that? We've done that. We've done the walls. That was James answering Helen's question. So it's Peter's question about dogs and music, and Richard stroke Zachary's question about sloths, and Gregor's question about the Red Sky at Night. Louise is in Billericay. Louise, question or answer?
Answer, James, please.
Carry on, Louise.
So it's the dogs and the music question, James.
Yes.
And actually the application isn't just to dogs, it's to all animals. And it's backed up by lots of studies.
Good.
So animals are basically sentient. You know, we sort of have a juxtaposition of us being, I can never say anthropomorphic traits that we apply to animals and sort of humanize them, but actually underlying that, they also have their own emotional intelligence and emotions. So we know that the music does affect them. So the gentleman who called in is absolutely, his dog will be enjoying that. It's been
not all me. I mean, he wouldn't enjoy Cradle of Filth, would he? Or some sort of thrash metal?
It's funny you say that, James. There was actually a study that...
Because you were just listening to Cradle of Filth before you turned the radio on.
Yeah, it's Nick Ferrari.
You can't possibly say that on my programme. That's
sorry.
Honestly, carry on.
Sorry. Right, so, but to get back on track. So there was a study done with monkeys, who obviously are very intelligent, where they allowed them to choose their own music. And they preferred lullabies to techno music, funnily enough.
Oh, really? That doesn't surprise me, because they're looking to be soothed, as it were.
Yes, but my qualifications, just to just get ahead, is I've got an animal sanctuary. So when I was setting the sanctuary up, I did a lot of research, and classical music is deemed to be the most popular in terms of the responses from animals. Cows have been seen to produce more milk when they play music in the dairies.
I've heard that. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
So what do you play?
So I play classical music, but I also sing to my pigs quite badly, but they like it. And since they're all rescues, now they recognise that lullaby. So after they have their dinner, I start singing to them. I've got videos of it on my TikTok page.
Oh, lovely.
And I sing a particular song, and when I start singing that song, they all come around and start getting into their beds and nesting. And I had 2 escape the other day, and I was really panicking because it took 9 days to catch one of those when I originally rescued them. And I walked down and started singing the song, and they walked back about 1,000, 1,500 yards with me, just one either side, like a pair of Labradors, while I was singing to them.
So it was the song, we were like the Pied Piper of pigs?
Yes.
That's lovely. What song is it? What is the song? What is the song?
It's actually not a whole song, because I'm old now and I can't remember all the words to whole songs. So I sing sections. So I sing Go to Sleep My Piggies, and then each of their names, I sing Go to Sleep My Merlin, and then I sing, and they recognise it and they love it, and then they have a radio on where they have on overnight. But in a lot of sanctuaries, I've also got, don't laugh, James, because again, there's proof of it.
Yeah.
They have a projector that plays cartoons, because pigs have a higher intelligence than dogs. Dogs are a 2 to 3 year old child, and pigs are a 3 to 5 year old. And so they watch cartoons.
Do they have a favourite?
Anything that's bright and
I get that. I wouldn't laugh at that. It makes perfect sense to me. I mean, there's a lot of anthropomorphism going on here, I think. But,
there is.
But also mammalian crossover.
Yes. It's the kind of meeting of those two things. And actually, when you observe their behaviour on a daily basis, you do get validation of genuine responses. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Do you want to advertise your TikTok account, lest people want to watch you singing to your pigs?
Oh, yes, please, James. That would be amazing.
Carry on, Louise.
It's Ahimsa, Ahimsa, which is the Sanskrit word for non-violence and non-harm to all living beings. So it's Ahimsa, Animal Sanctuary UK.
And
we're
that's
on
it.
TikTok and Facebook and Instagram. And you'll see lots of adventures with the pigs, and you'll see them being sung to sleep.
Well, I mean, what more could you ask for? Do you have, I mean, 2 questions, if I may.
Yeah.
Where does one rescue pigs from? I've heard of rescues in other contexts. Is it, I mean, because where would a rescue pig come from?
So there's two areas where people rescue pigs. One is pigs that come from the commercial pig industry, where they're often killed at sort of 6 months old is the age they're killed. So there's a lot that come in as babies, and then there's ones that would be destroyed because they're no longer deemed productive. So there's that.
But this is, of course, I'm being a bit silly, as in producing piglets.
Yes, and well, the meat industry, basically. So
you can't not be, because people wouldn't want. I don't want to talk about Wilbur in such a brutal way, but people wouldn't want the meat. Wilbur, I think, is your largest pig. Is he still around?
No, I haven't got one called Wilbur.
According to your website, you have.
No, I haven't got a website, James. It's actually, you need to look on social media. I think there's an ahimsa in India.
Oh, I'm getting probably... Me. Yeah, no, that wouldn't be you, would it? You're in Billericay.
No. I don't. I'm working on my website. It will be up imminently.
I've got you. No pressure. Crikey, you've got enough going on looking after all these pigs. So here it is. It's a micro sanctuary in Billericay. I found your Facebook page.
Yes. So you can see them on there.
I can see them on there. How many pigs have you got at the moment?
9.
That's not bad. And
so we're a micro sanctuary. Obviously, there's lots with a lot more.
What other animals have you got? 9 pigs.
So we've got 9 pigs. We've got some Spanish rescue cats, and we're in the process of constructing a new home for rescuing chickens and turkeys.
Oh, how do you know the cats are Spanish?
Because I brought them back from Spain. And one of them walks around going, "Hola."
Round of applause for Louise, please. Oh, what larks. Thank you, Louise. Will's in Plymouth. Will, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on, Will.
It's your red sky at night issue.
Oh, splendid. Carry on.
So the scientific reason for your red skies is high pressure, as you mentioned, traps your pollutants like dust and water in the upper atmosphere. That refracts your light, leaving only your red light, all the short wavelength, your blues and what have you, get scattered off. So it goes red.
And if it's high pressure at night, it will be warm weather the next day?
Well, the reasoning is in the UK is because we have westerly weather. When the sun is setting in the west, it's in high pressure, which tomorrow will be blowing over the country and it will be delightful. When it's in the morning in the east, the high pressure is already gone. It's blown off over Scandinavia and it might be a bit miserable the next day.
I'll say fairer than that. Qualifications?
I'm an earth scientist.
Oh, round of applause for Will, please. Nicely done. Although I was right. I don't want to labour that point. And finally, Matt's in Northampton. Matt, question or answer?
It's an answer about the sloth and the metabolism.
Marvellous. Carry on.
So basically, they've just got such a slow metabolism, they don't actually really need to move very far.
Precisely. So why do sloths move so slowly? Answer, because they can.
Yes, and I mean, to subsequently prove that, I've got tarantulas which can go a year without eating because they don't do anything.
Yeah.
They just sit. So
that's what I would do. If that's what I would be like if I didn't have to, raise a family and stuff and pay a mortgage. I wouldn't move.
Everyone wants to be a sloth, and
of course they do.
You see the videos of them being hung up to dry when they've been washed, which is just so cute.
Not moving at all. Why would you? If you didn't have to, why would you move? Got an unlimited supply of food. When a sloth. I mean, are you a bit of a sloth expert?
I just like them. I think they're quite cool, and animals in general.
Do you know when a sloth is most vulnerable?
Probably when it's asleep.
No, it's fine when it's asleep because they're often covered in algae. So if they're being predated from above by an eagle, the fact that they're in a tree and they've got quite a lot of algae on them actually acts as the perfect camouflage. Sloths are at their most vulnerable when they're doing their toilet.
Oh, aren't we all, though?
That's a very good point, Matt. Qualifications?
Just like zoos and animals and sloths.
That'll do.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And I tell you what, it was Eddie's, the board game. It was Eddie's all day long until Louise popped up towards the end there. So Louise gets the board game and hopefully it will be put to good use at the Amahimsa Micro Animal Sanctuary in Billericay. Don't get it mixed up with the one in India of the same name. If you missed any of today's show...
Enjoyed that.
What, did you?
All of it.
Thank you. Well, the whole hour?
Yeah.
God. Well, first time for everything. Thank you for the feedback. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can also pause and rewind live radio, as well as listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits of my show in 60 minutes every day. Download it now for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Swarbrick will be with you at 4, but now it's Sheila Fogarty.
Thank you very much, James.
James O'Brien on LBC.